against all the evil that hell can conjure, all the wickedness that mankind can produce, we will send unto them only you. Rip and tear until it is done.
Hey, yo, chat. How's it going? Happy Thursday. Hope you're doing well. Welcome in, Steph. Welcome in, Voice Beast. Hope you're all doing well. It's a Thursday morning. I have breakfast. We're gonna chat today. I think today I'm planning mostly to just talk about news because a lot just happened in the last week. It's quite a lot. But I want to make sure that we focus on ways that we can cover the news where we're productive and not just doom spiraling, because I've seen a lot of that in the last couple days. So yeah, we're gonna cover a little bit of what happened and then what we can do about it, because I don't want to ever, when I'm doing like news coverage and stuff, I don't want to, I can't cover literally everything. There's gonna be a fire hose of stuff, and I only stream once a day. But also, like, I'm Canadian. I want to cover Canadian news. I can't let that be overshadowed by like a barrage of American stuff. Hi Alice, welcome in. Hope you're doing well. But also, like, I don't have the expertise to comment on a lot of things. I don't have enough legal expertise to speak on like legal shit in America. I know some Canadian law that has to do with my own industry, and that's really it. So I will be briefly covering some stuff, but I'd rather focus on the things that I know enough about to comment on, if you know what I mean. If there is something that's happening that like you want my opinion on, I am totally open to questions. I just can't necessarily guarantee there'll be an informed response, and if I don't know enough to comment on it, I'm probably go like, I don't know what this is. Sorry for posting all this stuff. I was on Discord. I'm honestly more talking to Fragment about it all in our DMs. Yeah. No, it's totally fine. As far as the political channel in the Discord, the Discord's been fairly quiet, so I haven't had to worry about it, but as things get busier in there, I just want to make sure that like we can talk about stuff, but I'd rather like post one thing at a time and like be able to have a discussion about it, or like if you're gonna post something, post it with commentary so that we can have a conversation and not just, because it's difficult to see like 6 really upsetting things in a row all with no commentary and no real understanding of like, you know, what the context is. I very much encourage that when like people are sharing political stuff, not just in my Discord but anywhere, to like really think about what the context is, why you're sharing it, like what kind of feedback you're looking for. So like, if you're like, hey, this is really upsetting me, is this something I should be really worried about, or how is this going to affect me, or what can we do to push back against it? That's always going to be more productive than just spam sharing news. I think social media has really trained us to just hit the repost button and not share any of our own thoughts, and just it gives up a lot of our voice to other people, that we just see ourselves as amplifiers rather than people with our own opinions. And I want to push back against that a little bit. I want to know what you guys think, and not just have you bombard each other with articles that we're also probably seeing in other Discords and online and stuff. I totally want to encourage like conversation more than anything. We can't escape the endless barrage of news as it is, just amplifying that traps others. Yeah, so like I definitely understand there's some streamers like Salt. I know that like you try and keep politics off stream and just like limited to like one channel in your Discord, and like there needs to be places people can go to escape stuff. I want to encourage political conversation because I cover it on stream, but I do want to make sure that if we're doing that, we're doing it in a way that's productive and not just fueling constant doom spirals. Yeah, because like this is going to be a marathon, right? We have 4 years of this, and if I learned anything from the first Trump presidency, it's that the way that he functions is just by fire hosing awful shit so that we can't really effectively address any individual thing. That people will start saying like, this is a distraction from this, is a distraction from this, and it's like, they're all important, but they're all also distractions, right? Like, it's meant to push the Overton window. It's meant to never give us time to actually think slowly about things. And I want us to, yeah, if you're gonna engage with it, have something to say. Exactly. Like, we need to think about why we're sharing something, what the point is. And it's okay if you don't know like what the impact is gonna be. You can share posts and ask questions, right? And like, I don't want to like shut people down, but like, it's difficult to have like a conversation if we're dealing with too many things all at once. And I'd rather cover fewer of the things, but cover them in depth so that we have a better understanding and more tools to like push back against whatever things we can, than try and cover everything badly, right? If we cover like 2 topics really in depth to where we can like effectively communicate about them with our friends, with our family, with our legislature, and like have a productive way to move forward, that's actually better than trying to have like a 30-second TikTok about literally everything that happens, because we're not 24/7 news networks. We don't have a team of writers. We cannot possibly cover every topic. And you're not a bad person for not being able to handle all of this all at once. It's designed like this on purpose. And the way that we cover everything is not by everyone covering everything. It's by having a diverse group of people with different expertise that can cover their topics effectively and communicate them effectively, think slowly and deeply about the things they know a lot about, and then share that with each other. But we share that with each other after the slow thinking part, not by just like ramming headlines at each other. Because like there's so many things that happened in the first 4 Trump years that were serious, and we needed to think slowly and deeply and push back against them. And there was also stuff that was just like nonsense, that was just meant to be a fucking circus to just waste our time and energy. And the hard thing is with Trump is it's impossible to know just on the things he says in the headlines what are going to be the things we need to think deeply about and which ones we don't. And I think taking them one at a time, taking the time to go like, okay, what is he saying when he says this? What are the implications? What are the tie-ins with other things? And if it's something in isolation, don't ignore it, but just be like, okay, that's something we'll put to the side and see if that develops in the future. It doesn't have a lot of tie-ins. Like with him talking about annexing Canada, right? initially I was like, okay, he probably means that as a joke. It has serious implications, so I'm not going to completely ignore it, but I'm going to put it to the side and see how it develops, because it could turn into nothing. It could just be some random bullshit that he says, and it could just turn into something serious, right? And then he kept saying it, so it's like, okay, that's clearly not a one-off thing. He's now made actionable comments about wanting tariffs and to use economic force, and he's talking about other countries as well, and he's expanding on that idea. So now it's a lot more serious than a one-off comment to Trudeau about being a governor. Now there's actual policies behind it that we can think about, rather than spending a lot of time on like some random thought of his that we don't have any context for. So now we're like, okay, tariffs. We can think about how they would impact Canada and the US, how that might manipulate our upcoming federal elections based on how people respond to Trump and how American economic force and Canadian economic anxiety can interact. And now we have something we can actually think deeply about, right? It's really, really, really hard to just take everything he says, because like, he can talk all he wants about military invasion of Canada, but like even he's stepped back from that because he knows that's unworkable. Because it is. That's just not, that's not a thing the American people are going to be okay with, is having war on their doorstep. They're used to fighting overseas. Having something on their border, they're not going to fucking go for it. So he's moved to economic force, and that's something that we can actually engage with, right? So I want to make sure when we're covering stuff in a way that we can, we're not just panicking, right? Because we're not going to be able to panic for 4 straight years. That's exhausting. And at a certain point, there's a certain amount of panic where people emotionally tune out. And it's not like we've had a break for the last 4 years either. It's been certainly less than Trump, but we've had to deal with COVID, the pandemic, lockdowns, anti-vaxxers, protests about that, like building white supremacy, attacks on free speech, Elon buying fucking Twitter and breaking one of our best sources of breaking news from people that are there. We've had to deal with Gaza and trying to not burn ourselves out while still caring about that. Like, there's been so many things that have happened in the last 4 years post-Trump that it's not like we're coming into this fresh and like ready to go. We're already tired. Hey, Dolly. Welcome in. Hope you're doing well. Nice to see ya. We are talking news. But I'm trying to cover it in a way where we can have hope about it, and not like, I have one of the local ministers in TST Toronto has posted a nice article on Substack about satanic hope, and like, this is not me proselytizing, but I think it's a really good primer into a kind of hope that I think, whether you're a Satanist or not, can help us get through these next 4 years with, because like, a lot of times I've been really resistant to the concept of hope because it's often portrayed as like sunshine and rainbows and toxic positivity, and I can't fucking handle that. The world is difficult. This kind of hope is bruised knees and getting back up and fucking dealing with it anyway. I've seen a video of someone punching a Nazi in the face and they slept after one punch. Oh man, the One Punch Man anime is great. I should go back and rewatch that. But yes, yeah, I know what you mean. I've seen videos like that too. And while as a minister I cannot advocate physical violence, rewatch One Punch Man. Yes. I will say there is a point where people are left with very little choice in how to defend themselves against a physical threat. Sometimes physical defense is what's required. Which is a lot in this day and age, absolutely. Brings a tear to the eye. Yeah, it's a fucking amazing video. I also cosplay One Punch Man. I also love the one where someone's explaining a meme and then becomes a meme because of one comedic hero coming out of left field with a right hook. It's great. But yeah, I want to make sure that off the hop, because I want to cover mostly news today. Maybe if we get like burnt out on it, I can pivot and do like a couple rounds of Rivals just to chill after. We'll see how I'm feeling. I might be too like mentally boomed to play video games. But we will see. But yeah, I'm gonna probably start with some like memeing around the situation. I don't want to make politics into too much of a joke. Like, it is something we have to take seriously, and memes are often thought-terminating cliches. They're just like a thing you share, being like, we agree on this. But I do think having a little bit of levity is going to make sure that we can emotionally handle all of this. I think having a little bit of comedy can get you in the right headspace to where you're not panicking, you have a little bit of levity, and then you can face the politics a little bit more emotionally prepared. But I do want to like avoid getting into the like super simple memes and like not thinking about them too. Like, there's so much that I want to change about how I approach politics in the next 4 years, about like thinking slowly and deeply and not just like looking at a thing and then moving on, you know? I think social media has trained us to just like think really fast. And I mean, a lot of call out culture and cancel culture, as much as like I understand like social responsibility, that's not what I'm critiquing, but like the idea that, you know, you have to have a fully formed, nuanced political position the moment you hear about something before you've even had your morning coffee is like, we can't expect people to be able to do that. And I think training people to stop and think slowly is what I want to encourage through the political coverage that I'm going to do over the next couple of years. I'm not going to be perfect at it. I'm as prone as anyone else to get TikTok brain rot and just like share a meme and move on. But I hope we can like together kind of deprogram that impulse of just like agreeing with something and reposting and just forgetting about it in the next 30 seconds as we watch a cat fall off a tree. I do enjoy Azura Digital Pebbles, yes. Though, so you and I, when I share Digital Pebbles with you, it's at least we chat about them, right? Like we'll have a conversation about things, if it strikes us. Or I'll share like 3 in a row that are all like kind of related and we'll talk about it. The thing about how I approach politics is I don't fuck the Republicans, the Democrats, right or left, it doesn't matter. Government is government and all of that is just nonsense for us. I want anarchy and peace. 3 or 12, yes. The thing I would say is like, politics as far as like, there's 2 kinds of politics, right? There's politics that are like the political parties and the operation of state. Hey Vanthi, welcome in, love you too. And so the operation of state stuff, like, and the political parties and the kind of unnecessarily competitive shit is exhausting, and I hate it, and I don't like it. I engage with it as much as I need to because it impacts the other kind of politics. But like, yeah, state level, and by state I mean the state, not individual US states, but like state governments are exhausting to deal with and overly competitive, and trying to find a party that represents you is impossible if you are progressive, because you're inevitably pushing the envelope. You're on the far end of the Overton window in the good direction as it trying to stop it sliding, right? So like, it's going to be difficult to engage with and exhausting because everyone's just constantly wrong about everything. So I get you there where it's like, it does feel like nonsense. The way I try and conceptualize that though in a way that allows me to engage with it is trying to see past the surface level stuff. Like, imagine it like a video game, right? It's like, I might not give a shit about these like 2D pixels or whatever. I don't care about this weird image that I'm looking at. I'm going deep into the code and being like, okay, what is this representing, right? So like, you know, the sprites may be 2-dimensional, but they're on like a 3-dimensional underwiring, and that's what I want to figure out what's happening, right? And underneath all of this posturing is about the justification and definition of violence, right? So at the end of the day, the Democrats and a lot of the like center-right neoliberal parties, their idea of justifiable violence is very status quo. It's based on law and order, and it's still based in financial capitalism. It's why the Democrats can't really define what's happening in Gaza as genocide, because status quo law and order allows for what Israel is doing. As much as it violates international laws, there's always been a carve out and an exemption for Israel, right? So, and that relationship between America and Israel has made it difficult to criticize that, right? Because the militaries are entangled and law and order is about, again, monopoly on violence. And so the US military is basically the super state, the global police force, and, you know, ACAB. So like, that's why they have problems. And the Republicans, especially now that they've gone super, super far evangelical right, is defining violence as, violence is justified when it serves their in-group and punishes the out-group. That's how conservatism works. And currently their in-group is white, heterosexual, able-bodied, Christian white nationalists, like that milieu, and everyone else is outside. So any violence that justifies their crystallization of power is justified. Any violence towards people outside that group is justified. It's when it goes the other way that it gets critiqued. I think Democrats are a little more warmongering, not because political beliefs, but weapon and security industry lobbying. Welcome in, Ostaria. Yeah. It is. It is, yeah, it is genocide. And like, yes, there is definitely weapon and security industry lobbying, but it's because the neoliberal way of thinking is vulnerable to that lobbying. Like, that lobbying only works because there is a simpatico there too. Like, there's a reason that the Democrats aren't vulnerable to far-right religious lobbying at the moment, right? And it's why they're not vulnerable to like lobbying from the left, from the far left, because their way of thinking is vulnerable to certain ways of just like certain appeals, right? So they're vulnerable to appeals to stability, whatever that looks like. And it's part of why, because they're looking for stability, for economic stability, for law and order stability, both domestically and internationally, that they're so vulnerable to be pulled left to the right, because on the right, they do offer a level of security and stability. It's just for that in-group, right? So there's enough simpatico between the two that it keeps pulling them over, if that makes any sense. So state, like all of these political parties are essentially arguing over what kind of violence is justified and what violence isn't. So if you have like a far left party, like say the Canadian NDP, they think that the violence of, and like, it's going to seem really weird that I'm defining this as violence, but it is. The violence of having everyone pay a lot of taxes by taking what they've earned away from them is justifiable because it can pool together and support many. That violence is justifiable when it supports the many, when it gives people like a base level of rights, right? That's what the left defines as acceptable violence. And that can go to extremes where it turns into like nonsense bullshit. I'm not going to pretend that there isn't bullshit on the left, because there is. But yeah. It's I don't know what song it is. I just play the fucking Doom Eternal soundtrack constantly because I like metal, and it's one of the few metal playlists that I can just play on stream without Twitch and YouTube getting mad. Anytime I've experimented with other playlists beyond game stuff, I get in trouble, so I just stopped. Ads are in like 20 seconds, by the way. I might take like a quick minute and a half to just have some of my breakfast so that nobody misses anything. But yeah, and then after break, I'll get into like more about like the other kind of politics and like how that is sort of different. So I'll see y'all out of Adsville in a second. I just don't want all our new friends to miss stuff. Ads, are you gonna start, or are you gonna make a liar out of me? Because the little clock on my thing is like, it's ads time. I'm like, is it really? Is that what's happening right now? Ugh. Maybe ads aren't happening. But anyway, so we'll see. Once the thing says ads are running, it just says ads incoming, which is super not useful. It just says starting soon. But yeah, it's just like, so it's basically every party is trying to define what violence is acceptable to them and have, okay, yeah, now ads are starting. But what violence is acceptable to them. Yeah, what ads are acceptable to them. I'm North European myself, so I have quite big biases from my perspective, and I'm not as informed on inner policies as much. Yeah, I mean, like, it's also interesting, like, me being Canadian, too, right? Because, like, we're deeply influenced by America, but we do also have a parliamentary system that's much more European, so, like, shit's confusing sometimes. Like, so many Canadians do not understand that we do not have the First Amendment. I mean, we do, but it's about, I think, Manitoba being a province. It has nothing to do with speech. But yeah, what counts as left and right varies heavily from country to country. Like, where at least where the center line is. Oh my god. Love me some moo juice. Also, Steph, I don't think you got me a spoon for breakfast. It's gonna be hard to eat breakfast with no spoon. We have good freedom of speech, many European places that don't have, yeah, it's been a weird right-wing slide in a lot of countries lately. Thanks, honey. I'm hungry. Yeah, get over the nonsense of chords that I've arrayed in front of you. Crass, I think, said it pretty good. What's the freedom of us all against the suffering of a few? We won't be free until we are all free, and violence is only necessary in a few scenarios. Most of the conflicts of the world could be resolved with a conversation. Have they thought of that? Have they tried it enough? Why is it so hard for people to just talk? Thank you, honey. I think part of the problem is, right, that the idea that we won't all be free, that we won't be free until all are free, people on the left agree to that, but people on the right don't. So, or at least some people on the right. Yay, I have a super shotgun now.
Kept it hidden from you in this remote location.
So, like, because of how in-group, out-group dynamics work, that people feel like their best chance is with the in-group. You see this a lot with marginalized people who do like appeals to power. Like Caitlyn Jenner is a great example of this. So it's us versus them, this mentality is really bad. Yes, fully. And the thing is, it's manufactured, right? So like people don't naturally, I mean, we do form in-groups and out-groups. We don't find, like, people don't generally have these really manufactured ones, kind of on their own without outside influence. Like, generally speaking, growing up, the kinds of in-groups, out-groups I faced that sort of were naturally occurring among kids were like, you know, there'd be class and religion, but like, people didn't really care about sexuality until we were told to. And we mostly just didn't care. And like, I'm from like a very small rural town. Like, also like, you know, it's not that we weren't racist, because we definitely were. But it was more out of ignorance than like anything active. But as people got older, I saw people get more racist as they started to ingest like external stuff. Are you cool and good at sports or not? Yeah, it was like, who do you hang out with? Which, you know, ends up being very ableist at points because of autism and shit. But people don't care until they're told to. Yeah, well, because like people generally care about things that are in their own self-interest. People fight against their own self-interest when they're manipulated to believe that ultimately it'll benefit them. Like, the lack of class consciousness, I think, is like a really good example. People on the left tend to have decent class consciousness to some degree, though on the left, people could be a lot nicer to like people they code in their minds as white trash, because most of those people are just poor white rural folks. They're not necessarily shitty, they're poor. You need to have class solidarity with people in Appalachia and drug users that are out in rural areas as much as you do in urban, right? But for the most part, on the left, we can at least understand that homelessness is a problem, or that we need universal health care and like that sort of stuff, right? On the right, a lot of the issue is they're meant to feel like temporary embarrassed millionaires. And a lot of this comes from religious stuff that like, you're only, like the Protestant work ethic tells you that you're only poor if God made you poor. If you're not sufficiently righteous, then you'll be made poor. That you're suffering because of some sort of sin. And that you need to work hard to earn a better way of being. And by thinking that way, anyone poorer than you is a sinner, and they're clearly not working hard enough, right? That like some of these Christian cultural ideas that we haven't really struggled with or deconstructed much can make people think in really self-hating ways that then affects everyone around them. Yeah, and there's like infighting in the queer community too against like trans, bi, and ace people. Yeah, exactly. Or even like, I've seen infighting against other gay people who like aren't married with adopted kids in a white picket fence in the suburbs sort of thing. Like if you were a messier queer person, or like make things difficult for the straights to understand. But yeah, it's just like, really ultimately, the lack of class consciousness on the right is because people, oh yeah, the Bible is rewritten and retranslated. Yeah, but like some of it's like straight up been like, it's like not even biblical at all. Like the idea that, like there's two different ideas of how you get into heaven, right? There's either good works or just belief. If it's just belief, all you have to do is accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you go to heaven. That means to be a good person, you just have to believe you're a good person. You don't have to do anything. And that has negative effects. But then you also have the negative effects of believing that like the only way to heaven is to do charity and that sort of thing. That comes from like Protestantism. But that can also result in some issues if you don't address these beliefs and interrogate them, just taking them at face value with no nuance and no context, they can veer off into really fucking weird ways. Any belief taken at face value with no nuance and without it interacting with other values gets fucking absurd. So if you think you have to do good works to get into heaven, that can lead to good things like Christian charities. That can also lead to, well, if you're being punished by God, you must not be doing what you should be doing. If you're not working hard enough, then you deserve suffering. It's like the inverse of that, right? Yeah, talking stuff out is better than avoiding it. Yeah. And I think, like, talking it out productively rather than just yelling at each other, because just yelling at people and being condescending, be like, I'm right, you're wrong, shut up and listen to me. Like, even when you are right, people are going to get defensive and are not going to take that well. And we have to recognize, like, if we're going to be scientific thinkers, we have to understand that human beings are not fundamentally rational beings. We have emotions, and you cannot expect a person to not have emotions. You can't just, like, deny reality and pretend like everyone is supremely rational. And that includes ourselves, right? So yeah, back to the main thing was you have this, like, justification of violence kinds of politics and the party politics and deciding who's going to have the levers of power to decide what violence is going to be okay. And who is going to be harmed and how much and who are we going to do harm reduction for, all that shit, right? And then there's the personalist political politics, which is the politics of, like, some of that interfaces with the other one, but it's things like, you know, employment discrimination. How am I getting a job and paying rent if there's employment discrimination? How am I accessing services if my identification doesn't match how I feel or how I express myself? How am I going to interact with the community based on how society is defining and restricting me, right? That's the word I was lacking? Debating, yeah. Even though only God is supposed to be able to judge in that way, like, yeah, we can be discerning, but not like that, yeah. But yeah, I think, like, the personalist political stuff is, like, a really good way to start people, to bring people into caring about state politics. Because state politics should only matter in so much as it affects your personal life, and the personal lives of others. So if you're like, okay, I'm at risk of going bankrupt if I have a health problem, then we can get solidarity together and be like, I care about how these all of these different parties want to justify what violence is and isn't okay as regards to healthcare. So how are they reacting to Luigi? Like, do they think that is justified violence? If they don't, why or why not are they feeling that way? Is it because they don't believe that, you know, vigilante justice is okay, because that can go really dark? That is a very valid take to have. Is it because they think Brian Thompson was a very nice family man and we should care that, or they're trying to justify that, like, health insurance is a good thing that we should have in society? That's less of a good take, to put it mildly, right? So, like, I also really, really, really encourage starting local. Yeah, Dolly. But I think starting local and being like, okay, if you don't, like, the state stuff feels, like, federal level stuff feels, like, really abstract, and it's really hard to understand how that's going to affect you personally until something like a Trump inauguration happens. You're like, fuck. But at the very least, you could start local, right? Like, look at your school boards. That's going to affect, if you have kids, that's going to affect directly your family. If you don't have kids, that's going to affect your entire community, because what those kids do and don't know is going to affect what kind of adults they become and what adults you have to deal with every fucking day. So, like, do you want kids that understand media literacy in your neighborhood? Yeah. So you're gonna want to support a school board attendant, like a school board position, that also supports that. Do you want, like, a really common thing with school board trustees is like, do they support reproductive health care? Do they support LGBTQ rights? Is that something you want? Like, do you want the kids in your neighborhood to grow up to be gay bashers, or do you want them to grow up to be happy queer people? Or allies or whatever, right? Okay, what school board trustee you vote for in your municipal elections is going to have a huge impact on who these kids become. Same thing within the US. I think you vote for, like, sheriffs and judges and things like that can have a huge impact on your local community and, like, who in your community gets sent to jail, whether they get sent to jail, what kind of, like, whether you get moving towards restorative justice or carceral systems. Like, that can have a huge immediate impact on your personal political life, right? Same thing with mayors and stuff like that. And as you get more engaged locally, you can start to see how, like, you know, the state or provincial level starts affecting your municipality, right? A lot of people in Ontario are starting to get more politically engaged because of Doug Ford fucking with their towns. And it's like, okay, I get how this works now. And then the next step from that is being like, okay, now you're engaged provincially. How is the federal government affecting your province or your state or whatever? I don't know if this is related to the talk, but I would like to get a job so I could buy spray paint and cover up some shitty symbolism in my neighborhood. Yeah, honestly, yeah, I know what you mean. Where I live here in Romania, I've seen we vote for mayor, parties, and president. Yeah. So, like, there's a lot of ways to start getting engaged, or, like, pick a topic that you're really, really passionate about, right? If it's queer rights, like, I would say pick two. Pick two things, maybe three, that you care about, and those will be your topics that you dig really deep into, and see how politics, you know, locally, regionally, and nationally affect that topic, and that'll be your in to care. And, like, don't worry about being, like, a one-issue voter, right? Like, try and engage in harm reduction more broadly, but having one issue be your in into caring is, like, a really good hack so that you don't feel exhausted and alienated by, like, the broader stuff. Politically elected person to serve law. Yeah, that is wild to me because that's not how it works here in Canada either. We don't vote for our police chief or anything like that. That's not how it works. Do your daily. Yes, let me grab the thingy. I haven't set up a command for it yet, but I do have a really quick. It, like, pops up so fast. I memorized the URL. Yeah, do your dailies. And you can do it on your desktop, on your phone, and on incognito mode will count as 3 if you have time to do that. But that can help out Palestine, and it helps. I think it's like the UNWRA, which is good. But yeah, I just wanted to be like, to start off the hop with being like, okay, we're gonna be productive about this, and have hope about this, and yeah, so, like, I just don't want us to doom scroll for the next 4 years. And if y'all have any questions at all, like, let me know. And we can have a conversation about, like, a thing. I don't want to try and do too many things at once, you know? We'll have conversations, and we'll think slow and deeply about stuff. Yeah, doom scrolling. The only doom scrolling you should be doing is playing Doom. Because, like, I have to be on social media for work, and even I've, like, really cut back how much time I spend. May I ask about you? Yeah, sure. Is there, like, a specific question that you have? I'm very much an open book. As long as it doesn't dox me, I'll say pretty much anything. Well, I guess TOS too. And on my shoulder. What you eating? Cookie dough. Yeah, I have cookie dough for breakfast because I can't eat solid food very well. I'm not really supposed to eat very much fiber, so I have cookie dough for breakfast. There's a tag Satanist. I wonder, do you believe in some kind of Satanism, and if so, what kind? Yes. So, I consider myself a temple Satanist or a, like, neo-romantic Satanist. So, basically, I'm a member and a minister of the Satanic Temple. I don't speak on their behalf or whatever. Anything I say on stream is my perspective. But, essentially what that means is, yeah. So we believe in the 7 tenets. I can share the 7 tenets if you want. But essentially they are, based off of, like, old philosophy. Anyway, the main point being, we don't believe in a literal Satan. We don't worship the devil. We don't believe in a real, literal Satan. We more are inspired by the story of Satan as retold in, like, Paradise Lost or Revolt of Angels, that sort of thing. Yeah, that makes sense. Love to see the 7 tenets. Forgot some of them. Yeah, absolutely. I actually have the TSD website up because there's a thing from TSD I wanted to share later today too. So that's sick. Where's the? Should be the tenets are in there. So like, we essentially see Satan from the romantic satanic literary tradition, like Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, Milton, like that saw Satan as essentially a allegory for political resistance and rebellion against tyranny. So that's kind of the gist of it. We're pro bodily autonomy, pro compassion, pro science, and yeah, the tenets are usually like the easiest way to understand things. And it is important to note that while we do, as TSD, do politics, that's as a expression of our religious beliefs, that is a expression of our religious calling to oppose tyranny. We're not a political organization pretending to be a religion. We're a religion that is politically engaged. I'm a non-religious person. I do love information because information makes you more open-minded about other cultures and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And like anytime I share satanic stuff on stream or in person or whatever, it's more as a way to like have a dialogue and so that people understand the values I'm working from. Because I think it's easier for you to understand when I say something political if you understand like the values that are informing my opinions, and then you can think more critically about what I'm saying. And because I'm a Satanist, those values really underpin, those are my values. So understanding, at least the tenets are usually the values I come back to when I'm like thinking about what to do. Self-benefit without hurting others, not restricting yourself. Yeah, exactly. So like, and I also, like, for at least TST Satanists, we also tend to think of ourselves as not just benefiting ourselves, but as responsible for our communities as well, and thinking about how we fit into a larger social context rather than just as like single isolated beings. That's kind of the contrast with Church of Satan. A lot of Church of Satan Satanists are a little bit more self-contained and focused on themselves, which is totally fine. But TST tends to think more in a like socially engaged sort of way. But yeah, so let me see. Switch themes. So, Satanic Temple, there's the tenets. So I can read those out for you. One should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. Beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. Every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written and spoken word. So, those are the tenets. That's kind of like the basic undergirding of all TST Satanists. I haven't really found very many left-leaning people who are super opposed to these, which makes sense because they are based off of like, I think it's Hobbes' natural laws, if I'm remembering right, which underpin a lot of like Western values more generally. So like, you know, bodily autonomy, you know, forgiveness, free speech, like a lot of these things are fairly standard Enlightenment values that are kind of the underpinning of modern Western democracies for the most part. Like, I don't know. Like this one, this is the reason why we make new laws, right? And why justice reform is a thing and that sort of stuff. I've ever seen something like being a Satanist is basically being a spicy atheist. Yeah, I mean, in a way. We consider ourselves non-theistic, but I think the reason we call ourselves non-theistic rather than atheists is we want to not just say what we aren't, but proactively and positively say what we are, right? And I think for some people, there are atheists that have like deconstructed their backgrounds, but then there are also people who are, I would call them atheistic Christians, where like they have all those Christian cultural backgrounds still. They believe a lot of the same Christian cultural things. They just don't believe in God anymore. Like, I think truly deconstructing your faith requires like looking deeply into not just the supernatural claims, but also like the cultural assumptions and biases, and deciding which ones you want to keep and which ones you don't. Some you might want to keep. The name is mostly deceiving for outsiders, but its ideology, there's theistic Satanism, it's a little more edgy, black metal stuff, you know. Yeah. Well, and like, as far as like theistic Satanism, there is also like a diversity of like, you know, there are some that do straight up like dark satanic shit, which is super rare. But then you get like Luciferians and demonolatry, which is like essentially spicy paganism, honestly. Like the way people talk about being chosen by whatever demon versus being chosen by Loki or, I don't know, Isis or whatever. It's like, it's fairly similar. They're not exactly the same, but there's like some analogous stuff going on there. But yeah, like, yeah. The name can be somewhat deceiving because people's ideas of what a Satanist are based on, yeah, like a poser. Yeah. And I think it's actually Hebrew, but yeah, Satan just means opposer, or adversary. And I think, so, not to go on a huge history tangent, but essentially Satanist was a epithet or a slur that Christians would put on each other if someone did like a heresy or didn't believe the way that everyone around them did, or thought differently, or was unpopular. It's also something they used to accuse Jewish people of as a form of anti-Semitism, right? So there weren't people who self-identified as Satanists for the last 2,000 years. It really started in the early 1900s. So shortly after the Satanic literary tradition, that was like the first time people started using Satan in like sort of a positive way. Basically in the context of the French Revolution, that revolutionaries kind of saw a little bit of themselves in Satan, especially because church and state were very much together, that the king was chosen by God. So to criticize the state would be to criticize God. So there was like a little bit of political Satanism there, but they weren't religiously identifying. There were also in the 1800s some, especially the late 1800s and the turn of the century, people who were occultists or like Gnostics or whatever, that would include Satan in a larger pantheon that would include Jesus most of the time. Very confusing. Like Aleister Crowley wouldn't be considered like an outright Satanist because he also worshiped Jesus. Stuff was really complicated, but you don't get people actively calling themselves Satanists in a religious sense until the turn of the 1900s. And basically there was like a couple like small groups and then that started it, and then very shortly thereafter Anton LaVey was like the big first with any notoriety. Pagan beliefs are quite common here too, but their old Sami people beliefs, their rituals are quite mild compared to others. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that in Europe that like European indigenous beliefs would also still be around. Like it's difficult to completely get rid of a lot of that. Like Krampus is like, some of that comes from like pagan, like Nordic history. Christianity makes sense for me from a young age. Yeah, me either. Genuinely me either. I wasn't really, like my mom's Christian, my dad isn't. So like I wasn't raised particularly religious. Like Christianity was, it was something I was exposed to alongside other beliefs as just like a thing other people believe, including like ancient myths, is like this is something people used to believe. So like my first real time being exposed to Christianity, I was real fucking confused. I was like, what is happening? What does this mean? But yeah, so like most people's ideas of Satanism come very much from that like pre-1900s where it was just a thing you called people that you didn't like during witch hunts and that sort of thing. Then there was a very brief period where people identified as them. And then we had like very shortly after that, the Satanic Panic, where you had false claims of Satanists like doing a whole bunch of heinous shit. So people really aren't familiar with what Satanism is. So it's like, oh, nice. Yeah, I would probably like, just because like outing someone as a pagan can still be like dangerous in some places in the world, I would say like maybe don't share their name without their permission. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like I don't tend to share names of Satanists either unless they're out publicly. Just because like you never know if like that might impact them, especially like if they live in like the US or certain conservative areas, even in Canada or whatever, that like might affect their employment or their relationships and stuff, you know? But yeah, so Satanism. Anytime you want like a deep dive on like satanic stuff, let me know. I would probably want a little bit of heads up for like anything super specific so I can like, you know, refresh my memory by reading some of my books. But yeah, I know so many things. I could go on probably a 3-hour rant on the Taxil hoax alone, and I'm not even gonna go into it. But just know that like all of the stuff about like the Illuminati and the Freemasons doing Satanism is based off of a hoax from the 1800s. It's not a real thing. Most people are ignorant and uneducated when it comes to stuff like Satanism and stuff like paganism and witch stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And some of that comes from like, you know, misrepresentation in the media, that's getting better, or like purposeful scaremongering by whatever church they go to sometimes. I like learning stuff, so whenever you're up for it, hell yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, before I started identifying as a Satanist, I was very similar in that I, like, didn't believe anything in particular. I kind of made up my own shit. But was still, like, really curious into, like, learning what other people believe. Like, I went to synagogue with my aunt for a couple weeks when I was in high school. So, like, I've been to synagogues before. I've been to Buddhist temples before. I mostly avoid churches just because I find them uncomfortable because of my own religious trauma. Because I did face a lot of bullying for not being a Christian. And I always get really concerned that they're going to proselytize at me. I would be open to it if I knew it was a progressive church, I think. It's just I get really nervous in church environments. And I also, you know, being a Satanist, I don't want to, like, upset people either, right? By, like, being in their place of worship. Like, that's their house. I don't want to be a bad guest and make it about me when I'm in their place of worship either. So, like, if I was going to go to a church, it would have to be something where, like, I kind of know the environment I'm getting into, and I'm wanted to be there in a way where we're sharing and not, like, being pushy at each other, you know? And, like, it's not like I don't have a ton of Christian friends, too, right? But yeah, I get fascinated about different beliefs. When I was in Japan, we went to a bunch of temples because I was super curious about, like, how that looked because of how different, like, Shinto Buddhism is and how differently integrated into society it is. But yeah, I'm always curious about stuff. So I totally get y'all. But if you ever have any questions or if something comes up in the news and you're like, oh, like something satanic came up in the news and I want to know what you think about it, like, totally feel free to ask. You'll never get in trouble for, like, asking a question with curiosity. I'm always open to questions. Even if you're like, this may come across as ignorant, but I don't know better. That's totally fine. We all start somewhere. Every time I go to the church, I don't like it, but what I like are the paintings and the architecture. Yes. The good thing about the paintings and the architecture, right, is that part of the reason it's so good is for the longest time the church is the only place with enough money to commission artists. So that's just where all the artists went, because it was where the money was. So yeah, I love Gothic architecture. I love old cathedrals. I get upset when they get damaged and stuff, or they get torn down in Toronto to build condos. I get so upset because I love the art and the architecture. I love Gothic architecture. I learned a lot about the pentagram. Yeah! And the pentagram is, like, super common. It even appears in a lot of cathedrals as well because it ends up getting used as a symbol of the rose, which is, like, a symbol of Mary. Yeah, it's a symbol for paganism and Wiccans. It's a really, really, really common symbol that shows up a lot of places. I feel like a lot of it also being used for Mary and stuff probably is a little bit of, like, Celtic influence as well. So I used to be a Wiccan, actually, for a brief period of time. Yeah. Religion's interfering with the state and becoming, like, a little bit corrupt is, like, a fairly common thing. But as far as Wicca is basically a whole hog invention of Gardner in the late 1900s, mid 1900s. I think it was in, like, the 70s or the 80s. But he basically made it up as, like, a mishmash of, like, random random occultism mixed with like some pagan stuff. But yeah, Wiccans don't, like, they usually do rituals for themselves, magic for themselves. They have like rules about what they should and shouldn't do magic about. They usually have, you know, some sort of pagan gods they worship, usually Celtic, but sometimes it might be a different pantheon. The main downside with Wicca, but this is true of like a lot of different neo-pagan groups, is it can veer towards like white feminism really fast, where part of the reason I stopped being a Wiccan is being transmasculine. A lot of the like women's mysteries stuff felt like really not great for me, or like the crystal healing stuff can veer towards ableism really fast as well, where people would be like, I can heal your disability, and I'm like, it's genetic. No, you can't. I'd love if you could, but you can't. So like, but like that's a pretty common problem with like a lot of religions too, especially more like nature-y focused ones. So it's not like a specific Wiccan issue, but it is something to like keep in mind when you're in neo-pagan spaces, is just be aware of, there'll be like ableism and gender dynamics and a lot of racial dynamics that it's important to keep your eyes out, because there's sometimes you'll find like, especially Norse groups that might end up being a kind of right wing you want to avoid, or you might find Wiccan groups that are a little bit more turfy than you want. Certainly not the majority, but it's something where it happens enough that you want to like keep your peepers peeled. Oh yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. The co-opting of symbols is like a whole fucking thing. Super duper agree. So yeah, let's do a couple memes, and then I guess I'll go into some more like news. Let me pause the music. So this one came up, and this I think I shared for Dolly. I think you might have seen this on D-Tune stream because I shared
Touching grass.
It made me really happy. Okay.
Touching grass is not enough. I need horrible things to happen to powerful people!
Yeah. And like, as much as that's a meme, yeah, I think sometimes we're like, touch grass, and it's like, no, I don't need to be more grounded in reality. I'm grounded in reality. And the reality is that there are people in power that are a problem. It's like fucking God. Sometimes what I need is not to calm down. What I need is for people who have done harm to face consequences, you know? Almost done breakfast. Oh yeah. Well, and the fun thing is with like pagan rituals and stuff is that rituals do actually like hijack the human brain in like a really fun way. We are very motivated by like story and myth and narrative, and rituals are a way of narrative building with a community. So as a social species, that works really well. So it's like using these narrative symbols to like communicate something. Ritual is awesome. But yeah, that's really cool that it's like, oh, you know, I'm engaging with like psychologically affecting substances so that I can get through the gates of the underworld and stuff. Like, that's really fun. But yeah, I would very much love consequences to be a thing. Like, I'm very, very tired of rich people being able to rich themselves out of consequences for their terrible behavior and being able to continue to harm people. Like, that's not justice. Breakfast. I'm like, I know that's a 7-second meme, but like, you know, I think it's nice to like think about like, okay, what is that communicating? That's communicating a frustration with the idea that the problems of our distress are based in the individual rather than the social context that we're in, right? I do think sometimes we need to log off and touch grass and like, but not in the like, sometimes touch grass is used in that like pejorative way of like, oh, you need to fucking get back to reality. I think sometimes we just need to go outside and give ourselves a break. We need to go outside, give ourselves a break, build real community, and not just engage in nightmare fuel all the time. But sometimes it's like, the problem isn't me and my ability to go outside and make friendships and stay calm. It's that like, it is impossible to be psychologically well in such an insane world, right? I think like a lot of times, like there's such a thing called a social determinant of health, which is basically like, you know, if someone's poor, they're going to be less healthy, not because they're a bad person, but because they can't afford to do the things that would keep them healthy. Like they can't afford healthy food. They're working too much. They don't have time or the money to get a gym membership or to go work out or yeah, like, or like you can't afford a therapist if you're poor. Or there have been times where like I've had friends talk to therapists and it's like, your problem isn't that you have a solid grasp of reality. You're not overreacting. You're depressed because you're on the verge of homelessness. You're depressed because someone's going to take your rights away and you're stressed out about it. You're depressed for rational reasons. Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes in the cities it can be hard to work out everywhere because like, depending on like, if there's not really parks or it's not like safe outside, that can be difficult. But like, I do get what you mean. Like, it just can be hard, like, especially as apartments get smaller, you can't really work out at home. You're depressed, you're mad, yeah. Like sometimes the issue that someone has is beyond their control, and pretending like it's something they can just solve by thinking themselves out of it. That's why like CBT doesn't work super great for trauma survivors, especially who are still in active trauma, because I can't think differently about my behavior into making this situation go away. I'm being abused. I can't think my way out of being an abuse victim, and sometimes CBT can pour fuel on the fire of like gaslighting. So like sometimes a therapist has to go like, actually no, you're not the problem. Your problem is that you're in a terrible situation that you can't get out of for whatever reason. And like, maybe we figure out how to get you out of the situation or figure out ways that we can like help you cope. But like, sometimes you're just in an impossible situation. Like there have been times where like, the one time I went to therapy, I need to go to therapy properly, but finding a therapist that can work with my insane level of introspection and stress tolerance. When I go to see therapists, they don't really grasp that I have problems because I can talk about my personal traumas, like massively triggering things, completely calmly with no emotional response at all, because I'm pretty good at dealing with trauma, but the other stuff that I struggle with. But when I did go to therapy the one time, it was for like anger issues, which might be surprising that I have anger issues, but I do sometimes. Basically what was happening is I was being assaulted on public transit constantly. And sometimes it was on purpose, right? Like the incident that triggered me to actually see the therapist, a person threw me. Like, saw me with my cane, grabbed me, and threw me. I feel like I was justified being a little upset. And my hip was dislocated before this started. So I was already not having a good time. But yeah, you'd be surprised what being disabled in public is like sometimes. Like visibly disabled in public. It's a whole time. But like on top of that, I was also getting really angry from people just like bumping into me because I was in so much pain all the time. Like we'll get into like pain scale stuff later, but like I've genuinely like an 8 out of 10 pain as like my background daily pain. Like I've been in excruciating pain most of my life. So like people just like gently bumping into me hurts a lot. It's like stepping on a cat's tail. Like I will get upset. So like sometimes people just like, you know, they're not paying attention and they're standing on the bus and their bag swings and hits me in the knee. Normally not a big issue. It's a little inconsiderate, but you know, accidents happen. That's fine. But if my knee's dislocated, that hurts like shit. That's so painful. You have no idea. Cracked knuckles with malicious intent. Yeah. Yeah. But like, yeah. So like, I'm angry for valid reasons, and also, like, even when it's an accident, like I'm valid being mad because I'm in pain and someone's like knocked my knee out or dislocated my shoulder or something. Even if it's by accident, right? It's still understandable that I'm upset. So like the therapist helped me deal with the ones where I was like, it's an accident, I'm making myself more upset. But I'd like ruminate on it and get more mad. So I was given tools to like help, but like honestly, the thing that helped my anger issues the most was literally lockdown and being stuck inside. Because it simply meant I wasn't being assaulted as much anymore and I stopped being as angry. Just like my pain scale, or my pain levels are lower. I'm doing physically healthier because I could take the time to just focus for like 2 years on just physiotherapy and getting stronger. So like my anger issues have mostly gone away. Mostly. Yeah, I definitely get more mad when people fuck with my friends than me. Making English myself is the best thing I did. I don't know if you saw what I've written in Jordan's Discord, but I'm always happy that I've met y'all. Thank you all so much. I've seen the thank you text and chat too. Yeah, I have. Honestly, it's been great getting to know you too. Yeah, so the tool that the therapist gave me was legitimately just, because for me, the thing that was making me more angry is like, it would hurt and I'd get upset, but then I'd just ruminate on it and be like, you should have been paying attention and you shouldn't have hit me and what the fuck. And then I would just think about all of the levels of ableism that got me to the situation, and I just fucking stew in it and make myself angrier. So my therapist was just like, open the notes app on your phone, in 1 or 2 sentences, describe the thing that pissed you off, and you're not allowed to think about it again until you have a designated time before bed where you'll, like, for an hour, read through your notes, and then, like, you get to be angry then. You don't get to be angry in the moment. You're angry later. And that helped me just, like, not sit there and ruminate on it. I'm like, okay. And then just because I wrote it down, I felt heard. Or like, if it was something I was still mad about 6 hours later, then I'd talk to my partner about it and vent and, like, actually deal with it. Most of the time, it was just, like, that just hurt. That just hurt, and I felt angry for a split second. I didn't need to make myself more mad about it. And the motivation for me to do that was spite. Because I was like, you do not get to ruin the rest of my day. Just because you're a dick who hit me in the knee doesn't mean you get to make me mad for the rest of the day. Right? So, spite's a good motivator. But yeah, like, so sometimes, you know, the issue isn't the person, it's the situation. And I think, like, with the Luigi thing, it's like we've realized that, like, sometimes it just feels cathartic and healing to collectively acknowledge the harm that's gone unspoken for so long and actually get to express, like, the hurt that we've had to, like, kind of hold down, because, like, we don't have any real way that's socially acceptable to express that pain, and now we have a way to do that. Even if it's not, you know, socially acceptable to do what Luigi did, making memes about Luigi is a socially acceptable way to express how we've all been feeling, right? So, like, you know, consequences are good. Having a way to discuss things are good. Feeling like the pain we're feeling has been seen and recognized goes a long way towards helping us cope with it, because it's like, okay, we're not just suffering alone. So yeah, like writing about it, talking to people about it, and like not being alone in it, like super, super duper helps. Also, just Portal 2 moment about current events. Someone steals 10 coins, you're gonna run after them and leave your bag of coins to be stolen, or you're gonna let them have... Yeah. You just gotta, like, proportional response, right? But yeah, this makes me think about current events.
Here's a couple of facts. He's not just a regular moron. He's the product of the greatest minds of a generation, working together with the express purpose of building the dumbest moron who ever lived. And you just put him in charge of the entire facility. Good, that's still working.
Yeah. Music and gym, mostly work in private security and as a bouncer, and during the years I had to learn how to keep all the shit inside until I could vent it. Yeah. So right now the only really remaining anger issues I have is like with autism. When I get overstimulated, I get mad. And for me, the best way for me to deal with being overstimulated, especially when I'm starting to get frustrated, is if I can't always, because sometimes I'm overstimulated because I'm working, but when I have time, is like to get it all out, is put some really angry music on and go for a walk. Just go walk for an hour. And eventually I rage stomp it all out. And I'm away from whatever's been overstimulating me, and I feel so much better. Where like, whenever I'm just like angry, is if I just go walk it off, I feel so much better. I have not. 2 seasons. Oh, it's an anime. Cool. I'll throw that in my endless to watch the list, but it'll be on there. But yeah, I think it is interesting that we've all decided to put Wheatley in charge of the facility, collectively. And it's like, yeah, I guess we're not responsible. Like, I'm Canadian, I didn't vote for Trump, but I mean, I live in Ontario and we have Doug Ford, so it's not like different. It's kind of the same thing. We need to stop putting the friendly morons in charge of everything. Not that Gladys is better. She needs to learn how to not tsundere lesbian at us quite so hard, but yeah, just it's interesting how video games are reflective of stuff. Speaking of video games teaching you stuff, oh my god. Honey, I can smell that. Steph is spray painting something, I think. Okay, cool. Give me that.
I've learned so many. Don't you just love it whenever you learn things from video games? Like, I've learned so many things throughout my life just by playing video games. And one of my favorite video games that I've learned, like, great life lessons from, that I think everyone else should learn from, is called Wolfenstein. We should all learn something from Wolfenstein.
Yeah. Wolfenstein is such a good video game. We should all learn things from the video game Wolfenstein. Just, just putting that out there. Maybe. I've learned a lot from Undertale. Yeah, honestly, Undertale is great. I fucking love Undertale. Wolfenstein true. Yeah. So, like, I have one more little meme to show you, and then we'll talk about. I think it's just one. Yeah, I have one more to share, and then we'll talk about the fucking Elon Musk incident, I guess. which is fucking super great. I love that. Someone is also a CEO, so you're also top. Yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't think the left got too hostile. I think the problem with the left is we bicker too much and we're kind of annoying. And because we're not organized and we spend too much time fighting each other and being overall annoying, that we're unable to like actually do anything productive, which leaves the right open to do whatever the fuck they want with no opposition. Like a lot of leftists are also like refuse to talk to people in real life and build community, so it's like you're just leaving local politics to the far right. We are very bad at working together towards a goal. Exactly. And like the thing is, like, especially, I don't know what it's like in where you are, Asteria, but like part of the issue is also there's been, oh god, since like the 60s, the 70s in America, there's been like the moral majority movement and the gradual meshing of evangelical right-wing Christianity with politics. And at this point, like the massive stuff going on in the US is tied in with like white supremacy and like apocalyptic Christianity, which is a whole thing. Like, yes, I think some of the left, like, not doing stuff is part of a problem, but like there's also the issue of like the far left has never really had any political power. It's been like the center left, like liberal parties. Right? Like it's not like America's never had a left-wing party. They've had the center and the far right, and that's been pretty much it. Oh, try not to say cunt. Yeah. I mean, the benefit is there's a lot of influence of Britain in Canada, so like I would know what you mean. The start of the rise of the right started from the refugee crisis, and the left didn't do anything. The right feeded hate to people. Yeah. A lot of like scapegoating outsiders or perceived outsiders, and like the left not having an answer, right? So I think like it's a really common problem that there'll be a problem, right? Or the right might claim there's a problem where there isn't one, but underneath the claim there's usually an actual problem, right? So like let's just say with like immigration in the US, there isn't really an actual immigration problem in America. Not really. What there is a problem of housing, affordability, general resources. So like when you have a lot of immigrants coming into a neighborhood and there's not been a lot of infrastructure spending, now the infrastructure that's been neglected and borderline falling apart anyway, or is already strained anyway, like underspending on schools, hospitals, transportation, all that's now being strained more. So the right goes, there's an immigration problem. The left goes, no, there's not. There's no problem. Or the Democrats go, there's no problem. The problem isn't real. But people are sitting there going like, well, but I'm experiencing problems. So I could either go with the left that's gaslighting me and trying to tell me nothing exists, or more accurately, the liberals or the center. Because the far left may or may not notice that there's a problem. And then on like the right, you've got like, they're at least acknowledging there's a problem. So I guess they're right that it's the immigrants. Whereas a really good left-wing response should be like, there's the problems you're having with immigration has nothing to do with immigrants. It has to do with underspending on schools. If we had well-funded schools, having more students wouldn't be a problem because we'd have space and we'd have funding for it. If housing was affordable and we had government-funded housing, then you wouldn't have to deal with housing prices increasing from competition. We would have enough space for everybody. If, you know, we dealt with corporate greed, we wouldn't have to deal with grocery affordability issues or anything like that. I think a lot of the problem is the left letting the right define the conversation and just responding rather than having their values and redirecting the conversation back to our values over and over and over again and being like, okay, you say the border's a problem. Yes. Okay, you're gonna say the border's a problem? I think the problem isn't people coming across the border, is the fact that we are not providing services so that they can be supported in joining our communities. I think the problem is a lot of these folks are being exploited in their jobs, and we can improve their working conditions. And with improved working conditions for those with the least rights among us, that will put positive pressure to increase wages for everybody. Because, you know, McDonald's can only wage theft you so much because they know that if you quit, they can just hire someone for pennies on the dollar, right? But, you know, like, if we have an actual response to the problems that people are actually feeling, they won't pivot to someone who's at least speaking to the pain they're feeling, even if unproductively, right? COVID happened, inflation never balanced, financial problems boost every other problem. Yes. Because we had, like, actual logistics issues because of COVID, and then companies taking advantage of it to boost prices for profit. And I think, like, here in Canada, we had, like, the NDP pointing out corporate greed, but then, like, no actual proposed solutions. So you had people, like, a burst of support for the NDP being like, okay, yeah, you're talking about, like, greedflation and the monopoly on grocery prices and all these things that are genuine problems. And what's your solution? Okay, you're going to yell at Galen Weston in Parliament and then do nothing. Cool. That's not fucking helpful. Canada and the US are so heavily dependent on immigrant workers that there's no way this is going to end well, and that should have been the conversation from the center. Yeah. Yeah, and I agree, Dolly. Like, overstimulation is, like, a massive problem. But I think, like, a lot of the issue is we're not framing the conversation. We're letting the right frame the conversation, which, if the right frames the conversation, we're allowing the Overton window to swing wildly in their direction with absolutely no response, right? We're having that swing over, and we could have, if they're doing over here, if we don't want the Overton window to slide this way, we have to go equally far over here. We have to speak to our values and not concede the conversation, to not justify their points by agreeing to their framing, right? And I think maybe the left is starting to fucking get the point that we can't, because, like, that was part of the problem with, like, Kamala's campaign entirely, was when Donald Trump said that immigrants were a problem, she didn't say, no, this is the problem and that's how I'm going to solve the actual problem that you're dealing with. She went, yes, immigrants are a problem, and I'm going to deal with it less well than you will. I'm going to do a Republican light response rather than a hardcore Republican response. So, like, people are going to go like, okay, so both parties have admitted that immigration is a problem. Do I go with the right-wing option or the slightly less effective right-wing option? That actually happened? Yeah, like, Kamala's immigration stuff involved, like, increasing funding for ICE and shit. And, like, she didn't want to do mass deportations like Trump, but she did admit that there were border problems and that she was going to focus on border security. And that they were going to fucking build the fucking wall. It's like, like, no wonder she didn't do great. Or, like, the stuff with fucking Israel. She wasn't having a left-wing option. She was saying very similar things to Trump. So it's like you're letting the right frame this conversation constantly. And it's so frustrating. Because it's like, it's not going to work. You have to actually give people another option to vote for. You can't just say, I'm them, but less extreme. Less extreme doesn't earn votes. Being like, but I'm not them, doesn't inspire people to go out to the polls. That's why, like voter turnout was so much less. So you need to do better than that. And I'm hoping to fuck that Canada has watched what happened in the US and learned from it. And I think so, because at least Trudeau stepped down before the election, unlike Biden. I think Trudeau saw that, and Trudeau being like an actually intelligent person, no matter what you think of him, Trudeau is smart. And I think he saw that and went, yeah, no, the Liberals cannot win with me at the helm. I gotta fuck off. I clearly can't fight this massive PR problem. I need to just leave. Yeah, racism and xenophobia, yeah. And the fact that, like, when Kamala lost, a bunch of Democrats just went, oh, well, it's trans people's fault. It's like, all right, so you really are just Republican light. Like, you're not inspiring anyone to want to engage with you anymore. If you keep doing this shit. So one more meme, and then this is for the Canadians. And then I'm going to talk about what happened with Elon.
If I ever see anybody throwing a Roman salute, I'm answering back with a Shawinigan handshake.
So for anyone who doesn't know what a Shawinigan handshake is, that's a reference to a time, I believe it's when Jean Chrétien, someone like tried to fuck with him and he just decked them. I'm pretty sure. Let me just double check. Shawinigan handshake. Oh yeah. So it's the epithet given to a chokehold executed on February 15th, 1996 by Jean Chrétien, then Prime Minister of Canada, on anti-poverty protester Bill Clinette. The phrase comes from Chrétien's birthplace of Shawinigan, Quebec, as he often styled himself as the little guy from Shawinigan. Yeah, he just fucking grabbed the guy in the throat. Political tensions had been high in Canada since the result of the October 30th, 1995 referendum on Quebec separating from Canada, which failed by a narrow margin. In November 1995, Quebec separatist André Dallaire broke into the Prime Minister's residence at 24 Success Drive. He was armed with a hunting knife and intended to kill Chrétien. Dallaire was arrested before he could injure anyone, but Chrétien remained tense about the possibility of another attempt. I do believe Chrétien's wife also hit André in the head with a fucking Inuit statue too. Chrétien was entertaining. On the day of the incident, Chrétien was in Hull, Quebec, which is right across the border from Ottawa, which is in Ontario, to commemorate the first National Flag of Canada Day. As Chrétien announced the assembled crowd, anti-poverty activists heckled the Prime Minister over proposed changes to Canada's unemployment insurance program, and as he made his way to his limousine at the cessation of the ceremonies, Chrétien was confronted by Clinette. At that moment, Chrétien grabbed Clinette by the back of the neck and chin, forcing Clinette to the ground and breaking one of his teeth. Another protester who then blocked Chrétien's passage had his megaphone knocked away by the Prime Minister and was promptly pushed to the ground by the RCMP. Chrétien later defended these actions, stating, "Some people came my way and I had to go, so if you're in my way..." Give him the shillelagh handshake, yes. He also blamed the RCMP for allowing Clinette to obtain such close proximity to the Prime Minister, though the RCMP said they saw no breach of security. Chrétien also demonstrated a casual attitude towards the affair, later joking that he had used the Shawinigan handshake because he mistook Clinette for John Nunziata, whom Chrétien had dismissed from the Liberal caucus. Yeah, so basically there were protesters, they got up in his face and he just fucking choke slammed one of them. The RCMP is useless. Unless it comes to fucking with the Indigenous, they don't do shit. But yeah, it is a Canadian cultural moment of the Shawinigan handshake, of just grabbing somebody. So yeah. So the thing is, I will say about the Elon Musk situation is, I'm not going to show it on stream because I don't want to. We all know what happened. I don't need to fucking show that bullshit on screen. I don't know if it's within TOS anyway. But regardless, I don't want to subject people to having to look at that, and the only thing I will say about it is you don't do that motion without knowing what you're doing. There's no way you do that by accident. Nobody does. And especially to do it twice. That is so obviously on purpose. There was no like wave at the end of it. There was nothing minimizing it. He just fully did it to the crowd. He did it to the flag. People in Germany who have seen it are like, what the fuck? What the hell is happening? You could not do that here without being arrested. That's bullshit. Like, they all recognize this for what it is. Everyone who sees it knows what it is. And anyone who's minimizing it is either... There's two ways that you end up minimizing that, right? Is either you're caping for Nazis, in which case, fuck you. Take an entire fucking seat and read the goddamn room. Or two, you are possibly scared of potential backlash against you for saying what it is, whether that be being sued for slander or repercussions from the new administration or from Elon or him sending his fucking Twitter mobs after you, Gamergate style. Like, you're scared of impacts. And what I'll say is, if you are a journalist and you are so scared of the incoming administration that you can't say you see a Nazi when you see a Nazi, you are unprepared for what is going to be required of you over the next 4 years, and you should retire. Do something else. If you cannot face reality, you have no place reporting reality to the people. If you're going to minimize what that is, you have no place in front of a camera. You have no place in front of a microphone. Get yourself a desk job where you're not going to be in public eye. Because if you're scared of that danger, you cannot be a journalist right now. You can't. Marginalized people don't get to pretend that they didn't see what they saw. Jewish people do not get to look at that and pretend they didn't see what they saw. Yeah. Journalism is about the truth. Say it as it is. And you can even throw, if you want to save your ass from, you can say, allegedly, you can say, it looked like it might have been, you can throw all the fucking caveats in there that you want, but you can't go, well, that's not really what he meant. You keep doing that shit, you are not prepared to be a journalist covering a fascist government. What you have to decide is, am I comfortable honestly covering a fascist government in a way that reports the truth of what that is to the American people and to the world? No, then I'm not prepared for this time. I'm not prepared to rise to the occasion. I'm gonna fucking retire because I can't do this. And that's fair. I'm not gonna tell someone they have to put themselves and their families at risk. But if you don't want to be at risk, get the fuck out of the way. Because a bunch of us are more than willing to step up and fill the gaps because we can't get out of the way anyway. Shout out to PBS for being one of the publishers that did not flinch about being honest. Yes, fully. They were fully honest about what that was, right? So it was what it was. We're not going to pretend that fucking Elon Musk from apartheid South Africa doesn't know what that hand signal was. No one on earth doesn't know what that means. Everyone does. And if you think it's not what it looked like, go do that to your boss. Go do that in front of all and sundry and post it online and say that, see, it's just an innocent thing, right? You know it's not. You know that there's consequences for doing stuff like that. Elon doesn't have to face him because he's a fucking billionaire. He's the richest man in the world. And like we said earlier, I would like consequences to start happening to powerful people, but we all know what it was. That is not innocent, and minimizing that is bullshit. The second thing I will say, and that I really wanted to cover this because I have actual insight on this, is the people claiming the whole discourse around Elon doing that hand gesture and autism, right? So, yes, Elon Musk is autistic. He claims to have Asperger's, and we will get into that because that's very crucial to what just happened. All right? So, he is autistic. No autistic stims like that. Stimming are repetitive motions. They're not big ass hand gestures, okay? I don't stim by like flipping people off. I don't stim by doing anything like that. Stimming is like rocking back and forth, playing with your hair, fiddling with something. It's fidget stuff. Like, I've stimmed by braiding my hair, pulling on my hair, playing with my piercings, hand flapping. Like, that's stimming, right? This doesn't look like a hate speech symbol. I'm just flapping my hands around, right? I've stimmed by rocking back and forth, bouncing my foot, fiddling with things, like picking at my fingernails, like rubbing my lips, rubbing my hair on my face. Like, there are tons of stims that autistic people do. And you know how I know that it's bullshit that people are trying to claim that this is a stim? Because all the people claiming that this is a stim are the most wildly ableist people who make fun of autistic people all of the fucking time for everything we do, and now suddenly it's fine. When it's a cover for white supremacy and fascism, it's fine, right? So if I stimmed by doing a fucking Nazi salute, it's fine. But if I stim by like playing with a fidget spinner, that's cringe. If I stim by like rocking back and forth or flapping my hands or whatever, that's cringe. Fucking fuck off. Oh, hello again. Yeah. Vlad'll be up for you. Yes. Yeah. Literally, Dolly, Asperger's is bad because the doctor was a Nazi. Yes. So that is the whole other side of this, right? So you have people trying to blame autism or minimizing what he did because he's autistic and he doesn't know. And it's like, yes, he fucking does. Autistic people aren't dumb. And implying that we are is ableism. We're aware of, we're not necessarily great at social, at subtle social manipulation or navigation. We do know, like, blatant rules like that. We're not blind. Rocking and hair play is for me, and also tapping fingers, rubbing knuckles. Yeah. Tons of stuff like that. So, like, no, he is not doing what he's doing because he's autistic and just stimming, and all autistic people are like that. He did what he did, though, partially because he's autistic, and this is where the nuance happens, right? Autistic people aren't white supremacists. Autistic people aren't ignorant of what white supremacy looks like. We're not monsters. But there are some autistic people who are white supremacists, right? Because we're a diverse community. Autism doesn't make us sociopaths. And also sociopaths can be lovely people too. You don't need empathy to be a good person. But like, it doesn't make us evil, awful people who don't know things and will just hurt people, and you just have to be okay with that because we don't know better. We know better. Trust me. Because every time people excuse, frankly, white autistic men of doing shitty things, it's often white autistic men doing shitty things to racialized or non-men or non-cis men autistic people, right? The amount of times I've been told that an autistic man doesn't know any better, and so I have to let him touch me or something as if I'm not also autistic is infuriating, right? Autistic people aren't capable of love or empathy. Yes, we are. Yeah. And like, a lot of that's based off of like flawed research. Yeah, and we're touch sensitive. But like we do feel love, we do feel empathy. And for those of us who don't feel empathy the way that neurotypical people do, because like I don't feel a lot of emotive empathy, right? Like I do struggle to feel what other people are feeling. I don't really have an instinctive emotional response when other people are upset. unless I know them very well, or there's like, they're having a very extreme reaction, I don't really emotionally respond. I cognitively respond. I think through the empathy process, and I do care very deeply about people. I'm a highly compassionate person, but I do really struggle with emotional empathy, and that's partially because my personal physical and emotional pain scales are so fucking skewed that most people are upset by things that if it happened to me, I would never even register it as a thing. Like, when I see other people like dislocate joints, I'm like, it takes me a second to realize that, oh yeah, that's gonna hurt. That hurts other people. So like, you know, I don't immediately respond, but it's not because I don't care. It's because it's what emotive empathy is you reacting how you think the other person feels, not actually how they feel, which is why a lot of people have emotional, empathetic responses to my bones bending the wrong way, even though I'm clearly not showing any signs of pain or suffering at all. People freak out because they think it should hurt, right? It's an automatic emotional response, and it's not a thing you can control. But yeah, the only person who can touch me is my best friends. Yeah. Elon is a white supremacist because he's decided to be a Nazi, not because he's autistic, and he's chosen to center his entire identity around that. Including, yeah. So, I will say though, that, so an important aspect of how autism can lead to white supremacy is through Aspie supremacy. So the reason identifying as having Asperger's rather than being autistic or on the autistic spectrum is because Hans Asperger created Asperger syndrome as a way of differentiating between the autistic people that were coded as the R slur that should be sent to camps, to put it mildly, versus, oh yeah, I apologize to inanimate objects all the time. I've apologized to like Alexis or the Google one, the Apple one, you know. Sent it. Oh yeah, if you want some depressing times on Wikipedia, look up T4 action. Yeah, disabled people were sent to camps in Germany. Among the early victims. Because that's how eugenics works. Yeah. Not a thing that's covered very often, but yeah, that's a whole thing. But yeah, so Hans Asperger was separating out the ones that needed to be sent off, and the ones that could be useful to Aryan German society, right? And it wasn't out of some empathy with autistic people. It was about, why do I hate people? Yeah. But it's about figuring out which ones are useful and which ones are just a waste, right? Big air quotes, because obviously I don't believe any of this stuff. Yeah, it's eugenics. It was part of the eugenics movement. So if you're identifying with that, you think you're better than other autistic people. Or at the very least, don't care that that's how you're coming across, so you probably do, right? Even if it's not an outright thought you're having, there's some internalized shit you gotta deal with. So people who fall under Aspie supremacy, sometimes they don't even engage with the Asperger's part of it. Sometimes they will say things like, oh, autistic people are the next stage of human evolution. Autistic people are starseeds, and we're sent from beyond the stars to guide the human race. Or they say that we have superpowers, or like that we're smarter than everybody else. Autism is a superpower. Yeah, all that shit. Hey, Saren, I hope you're doing well. No worries, I appreciate the quick stop by. Have a good one. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, so like it's basically all of these like Aspie supremacy bubble is like all of these thoughts that autistic people are better than everybody else. The problem is autism is genetic, and thinking that you're genetically better than the rest of humanity is eugenics. And eugenics is part of the like alt-right, white supremacist, fascist pipeline. Because white supremacy is based off the idea that white people are genetically superior to everyone else. In fact, the term Aryan and like the starseed shit have a common history of like through occultism and Blavatsky. So it's, yeah, I can remember random shit, but I can't remember to eat. Yeah. Like, it is fair to say that there are some benefits and some positives to being autistic, that there are plus sides and skills that we have, as long as you're balancing it with, we also have the negatives. Just like you can say there are negatives to being autistic as long as you balance it with positives. It's a neurodivergence. It's not, it's disabling because of society, but also, you know, like any neurotype, there's a cost benefit situation there, right? Like, I get overwhelmed by other people breathing and then I can't fucking read because I can hear that someone else exists in my space. But you give me a silent, dark room and oh my god, can I organize things really well and really efficiently. I can do mind-numbingly repetitive tasks for days and be totally fine. I will not go insane. Probably because I'm already there, but yeah, so the Aspie supremacy stuff is like entirely tied in with white supremacy. Literally from the origins of both. The first origins of the term Aryan come out of this, like, some people are from beyond the stars. Like, Aryan, I believe, was meant to be like we're different than other races because we are a different species. We came from Atlantis or Lemuria or from the fucking Pleiades or whatever. It changes, but like the term Aryan is specifically tied to the same shit that Aspie supremacy is. And Aspie supremacy is tied to white supremacy and eugenics, and these are all intermingled like a fucking Alabama family reunion, right? You can absolutely steal that. But yeah, so all of these concepts are tied together. So it is true that Elon frames his autistic identity through white supremacy because he's a white supremacist and he's from apartheid South Africa, and his fucking grandfather was part of, I will deep dive this more, but he was part of a fucking weird ass group that got him kicked out of Canada. So like, yes, but also he's a white supremacist because he's autistic and how he thinks of autism making him like a savant and special and cognitively advanced, right? These two things are deeply intertwined, and I don't know if you could cause and effect, figure out which one came first, like chicken egg style. I think they are deeply entwined. And I think this not because I know Elon Musk personally, it's because I've known men like Elon Musk personally, and I've known autistic women and non-binary people like Elon Musk. I've seen this in the autism community a lot, right? So, I think it's just important to note that, like, yes, people saying that, like, he did a Nazi salute because he doesn't know any better because he's autistic is ableism, and it's kind of like a soft way of calling us the R slur, right? It's saying that we're too dumb to realize when we're doing blatant hate speech. Autistic people are not that, but there is the nuance of he is doing it because of this intertwining of his view of his own autism with white supremacy. So like, there are some people who will be pointing out that like Aspie supremacy thing, and it's important to not like flatten that nuance and pretend like that's not a thing. Just, yeah, the slow changing of Elon Musk online has been interesting. But yeah, so like, both of these things can be held in tension at the same time, right? That like, he's autistic and a white supremacist, and these things are deeply entangled, but they're entangled in ways of knowing, not because he's ignorant. He's not doing hate speech because he's ignorant, and autistic people, the autism isn't making him ignorant. His view of things, both autism and not, lead down this path, right? It's why when he did it, I was completely unsurprised. I mean, I was a little bit shocked that that was happening in front of everybody, but also I've kind of lost the ability to be surprised by fascism happening in America in the last, 5, 6 years, 10 years. Since 2016, I've really lost my ability to be surprised by a lot of things. Disappointed, not really surprised. But yeah, so I just thought it was important to cover that particular nuance because a lot of people aren't aware of that, and I know people have been minimizing the hate because of autism. Yeah, a little surprised, but like I wasn't as surprised as a lot of people seem to have been. So like, I think having that nuance was something I wanted to share just because Aspie supremacy is a concept that a lot of people aren't super familiar with. And yeah, it was just one of those things where I was like, I have information in my little noggin and I want to fucking share. Gonna like info dump the toxic ass shit that's in my brain in a slightly less awful way. But yeah, so that's important to note. And I think it's also good to know like that this is the end of a path and a pipeline. So when you see other autistic people in your life in the early stages of falling down that pipeline, that you can be like, all right, when you say that you're like a starseed or that you have superpowers, let's deconstruct that a little bit. Are you saying that like you're trying to push back against the idea that autistic people are useless? That's fine. But you do have to understand that like autistic people are not, we're not lesser, but we're not better either. We're just people. Ooh, nice. DIY is awesome. But yeah, I really, really, really wanted to make sure that like, I covered that part just because, it's not the most common perspective, and I had a little bit of insight, Ooh, so we're gonna do some Canadian news, which we're gonna pivot as I'm gonna start with federal stuff that's sort of connected to the Americans, and then slowly pivot into more local Canadian stuff, and then we're gonna discuss hope and how we can get through the next 4 years. Forever, yeah, everyone is the same. No one's higher, no one's lower. We're better at different things. The diversity of humanity is like how we've survived, right? Like night owls versus like morning people, right? Early birds are good. We need them. We need a morning watch, but night owls are good too because we need night watch. Like we need people awake at different times to make sure that everyone's being looked out for. Right? Like that's how a social species works, is you have people who do different things at different times to make sure that like we're not vulnerable. Yeah, it's society. The Trudeau salute. Oh my god, what the fuck? The problem is I don't know what the Trudeau salute is, so I'm just imagining it's when you just like throw yourself bodily down a flight of stairs. just I had to Google that. Yeah, let me quickly check what the fuck you're talking about. Pierre Trudeau, the then Prime Minister, gave the finger to protesters in Salmon Arm, British Columbia, earning the incident Salmon Arm salute. The gesture itself is also nicknamed it. Oh! Yeah! I'm okay with the Trudeau salute. Yeah, that's fine. But yeah. we're all just different. We all have different stuff. I think I came here without sources. Nah, bud, I know you did.
Pierre Poilievre has never shut up a day in his life, but now that we have 25% tariffs coming into Canada, he can't even find the courage to stand up and say, hey, we're going to do retaliatory tariffs. You know who has? Mark Carney and the Liberals. Elizabeth May and the Greens, Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. Everyone is trying to stand up to him. Even Doug Ford and the Ontario Conservatives are standing up to him, but Pierre is radio silent. The guy has spent the last 2 years nonstop yelling about things and saying how he's going to fix Canada, and now that we have one of the most existential threats we have ever faced at our border, he is saying nothing. Radio silent because he doesn't want to drag in the associations that he was drawing to himself. He wanted to be Canada's populist answer to Trump. He courted the far right. Elon Musk did not endorse the Conservative Party in Germany. He endorsed the AfD, which is the far right party. The party which has got in trouble in Germany for their thoughts and relationships to the World War II era of Germany. MPPs from your party have marched and sat and had dinner with white nationalists. And you have received endorsements from these people and from Elon, and you can't even speak up about that. You are gutless, Pierre. If you want to be a strongman, be a strongman. Defend Canada. Say you're going to institute retaliatory tariffs. You're going to do a dollar for dollar tariff against Donald Trump and everything he's going to do to Canada. Say that you're going to stand up for the rights of all Canadians. You were screaming from the high heavens when the Liberals brought in Hunka to the House, but you know who clapped for him? You did. All of your party did too. You are unfit to lead.
Yeah. Someone from the alt-right party died. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, people who think that people should be ashamed when awful people die should shut the fuck up. Because the thing is, if you are causing harm to people, people are allowed to be happy that you're gone and no longer able to harm people. But yeah, those auto captions suck. They suck bad. But I think it is important to note that, like, Pierre has not shut the fuck up until suddenly Trump's inaugurated and he's gone. He's just gone. And part of the reason for that, right, is that he's tied himself so closely to the Americans. He's tied himself to Trump. He's tied himself to the Republicans. That he's, you know, everything that the Republicans say, he echoes, right? And also with the foreign interference report, like, that's coming out in a couple days. I'll be covering that once that comes out. But he's got himself stuck between a rock and a hard place because he's tied himself to Trump, because he is also, this is going to sound wacky. Okay, so Pierre Poilievre is a protege of Stephen Harper. That's not wacky. That seems normal, right? The stage that is wacky is that Stephen Harper comes from the Reform and Alliance parties. They ended up amalgamating into the Conservative Party of Canada. And Stephen Harper is extremely evangelical. He is currently a member of the IDU. He's in a bunch of, like, super conservative groups. He's close friends with Modi. He works as part of a group that's developing military and surveillance technology for Israel. Stephen Harper sucks, and I wish he'd fucking go away. He was prime minister for 10 years, and that shit sucked so bad. For anyone who's Canadian and too young to remember, Stephen Harper was the worst fucking prime minister of my entire life. He sucked so bad. I would rather have 20 years of Trudeau than a year of Harper. And I am not fucking joking. He was so goddamn bad. He muzzled climate scientists. He was extremely anti-environment. He was fucking horrific. I will cheer when he dies. Yeah, if they don't want people to be happy, they should have been better people. Exactly. I aim to live a life where no one is cheering that I'm gone. I'm quite scared of the possible tariffs US will place. If he places the same level we tax their stuff, we Europeans are kind of fucked. We have burned our bridges to the east because of the Ukraine war. China, we already tax, so they don't buy our shit. South America and Africa get their shit from China. Yeah. I mean, you'd kind of have to have Europe together. I think Canada would probably band together with the EU quite a bit. Stephen Harper is in the competition for worst prime minister this country has ever had. Yeah. John A. Macdonald is worse. But that's because he had access to power that Stephen didn't have. Harper had to deal with at least some limits to his shit. But Stephen Harper is the worst prime minister of my life so far. So it is important to note that Pierre is in deep with extreme religious right in Canada. He has met with Diagolon and other right-wing hate groups that are worse in different directions. Analogous directions, but yes. So Pierre Poilievre is really, really, really in deep with the right, the religious right, who have deep ties with the Republicans and the religious right in America. Straight up, the Proud Boys that are really influential in right-wing American politics right now come from Ottawa. Gavin McInnes is from Ottawa. A lot of hate in the US comes from Canada because they have a propaganda machine on a level that we don't have and a population we don't have. So Canadian hate moves to the US, uses the US machinery to accelerate, and then push it back over to Canada. That's often what happens. So he's in deep with Trump partially because of that closeness, right? Like Poilievre has ties to like the Heritage Foundation and all that shit. They're all in together. However, he was also supported by, and this is fairly uncontroversial, it'll be proven when we get the foreign interference report, but the foreign interference report does mention from what we know so far that has been disclosed that it was there was influence from India and China. So where Poilievre is in sort of a rough spot is he's trapped between the people who paid for him to win as leader in Modi and India and China, right? And Trump, who he has deep ties with that community, but Trump is putting tariffs on India and China as well as Canada. Pierre is fucked. He has backed himself into a corner of hate, and he can fucking suck it. But like, that's part of, I think, why he's gone radio silent, is because when Trump wasn't elected, he didn't have to really address that as much. But as soon as he pivoted, Trump pivoted and started attacking Canada as well, Poilievre is now in a three-way getting fucked corner, and he's got to kind of, he's in his find out stage. He's fucked around so badly. So like, that's, I think, why he's gone quiet, because there's no real way for him to address any of these things without pissing off the other parts of this fuck triangle. Pierre needs some lube. Yes, he does. So he's dealing with some shit right now, right? And I think, based on what I've seen, right? So Trudeau met with all of the first ministers. They all agreed, except for Danielle Smith out of Alberta, to work together to have a cohesive Canadian response. It's really hard to campaign against the Liberals when Trudeau's gone, because that was what his campaign was. Yeah. Same thing with when like Trump had a hard time pivoting to Kamala at first when Biden stepped down. The difference being he ended up just pivoting to fucking attacking issues. But yeah, Pierre's like entire response is Trudeau based, which is ridiculous. But so I think Danielle Smith and Kevin O'Leary went down to probably try and make things a little bit easier for the Conservatives in Canada by trying to massage Trump into fucking chilling out a little bit, to something that would at least take one of these corners off of the railing that Pierre is dealing with right now. That didn't work. Because obviously it wouldn't. And why Danielle Smith and Kevin O'Leary? Well, Kevin O'Leary is a Canadian billionaire. He's one of the Canadian oligarchs, that Pierre's also in deep with, because a lot of them are far right as well. They benefit from fascism. There's a lot of different fucking factors involved. And then Danielle Smith, because of the oil and stuff, deeply entrenched with conservatism, because of, the mix of oil and the far right and anti-environmental stuff. But also the UCP in Alberta has also been deeply tied into the far religious right as well. So all of these factors are working together to create a massive clusterfuck where these people can't actually deal with the situation they're in, because the right has been very good up until this point of uniting against a common enemy, because they didn't have any power. Now that they have power, how am I going to explain this? So the left, we never get power because we're too busy infighting about what to do once we get it. The right sticks together, right? And they're like, we'll worry about things once we get power. And now that they have power, now they're infighting, and they're like, we don't know how we're going to use this power because we all disagree on how to use it, because we didn't have that argument first. Which is part of why when you get a bunch of like left-wing parties together in coalition governments, you actually end up having a lot of really cool stuff happening, because the infighting happened ahead of time, right? So if they get to the point where they're in power, like, that's why like the NDP and the Liberals could work together to get pharmacare and dental care, because like the infighting happened ahead of time. So now once they got power together, they were able to go like, well, we at least know we have this shit in common, so let's work on the things we have in common because we know we have that in common. Whereas like the right just fucking cannot figure out how to deal with, now that they all have power together, they're all so self-centered and self-focused that they don't know how to work together on this now. So they're all fucking fighting. I believe that was a bishop. Sorry about the nosebleed, but yeah, that bishop was great. I love seeing more ministers standing up in this moment, especially progressive ministers, like actually rising to the occasion and saying what honestly we should have been fucking saying the whole time, and not giving the power of religion entirely to the right and conceding that argument, and at least saying like, no, we're religious too. You don't get to have a monopoly on faith and that sort of stuff. Yes, that is what a Christian should be. If Christians were like that, Satanism probably would still exist, but like not to the degree it does. There'd be still like, there'd still be tyranny to push back against. There'd still be people who would rebel against whatever the status quo is, but like, those are not the Christians that I have to deal with, right? Yeah, have a good night. Have a good sleep. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it so much. Rest well. My friends are Christians. They still love me for who I am. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I have, like Salt's my partner. I believe Salt's an atheist, but like Salt's other partner is Christian. And like, we've never had a problem. My mother's Christian. Like, a bunch of my friends are. It's never been a problem because they're progressive, right? We have shared values in common, so our religious expression of those values being different isn't like a problem. My issue is when our values are incompatible. Yeah, I'm pouty. They have read the book. Yeah, yes. And also, like, I find progressive Christians are a lot less annoyed about my particular rereading of the book than, like, if you find a progressive Christian and, like, they have two options, right? They have, well, three. They have what they believe, right? Which is, like, they're reading the book and they're taking, like, what Jesus said of, like, love thy neighbor and whatever, okay? But for reinterpretations, there's two paths to go down. There's the right-wing reinterpretation where they're picking and choosing and reinterpreting the book as a exercise of power, or they have us rereading the book as we're painting Satan as the good guy, but like with the same values that Jesus had. So like at least the values are the same. We're just reading the book slightly differently. This thing is like a nightmare. So like most progressive Christians I've found would rather talk to me, a Satanist, and be like, yeah, you're reading the book you have some weird headcanon shit going on, but at least it like resembles canon in a way that makes sense, right? Like, okay, you have like some dreary fic going on. That's a little odd, but at least you haven't decided that the Death Eaters were the good guys. That's fine. You know what I mean? I don't know why Harry Potter is where I went. It's just when I think of fanfic, that's where my brain goes. Because I'm not Twilight pilled enough. I like vampires too much to be Twilight pilled. I burned the book as an act of rebellion, but it was just me, so nothing bad happened to me. Yeah. And I mean, like, I always am pro, like, people doing blasphemy for the self. Like, there's no need to go out and, like, purposefully try and be provocative and piss people off or hurt other people. Like, I would never burn the Torah. I would never burn the Quran. I'd never burn, like, a Taoist holy book either, or a Buddhist book or whatever. Because I'm not oppressed under those systems. I don't have a claim to those cultures. And so me, like, burning that book would just hurt people. But I've been oppressed under the Bible. That's my fucking culture too. I can play with that. That is my heritage. I can play with it. Most progressive Christians are generally A-okay with personal interpretation, or like, what you do with your life and faith are not my business. Yeah. Like, most progressive Christians are love thy neighbor as thyself, and that includes when people believe different shit. It's about harm reduction and being kind and compassionate. And it's like, you know, you'll know them by their fruits, and, you know, I think if you go off of that metric, you'll see, like, progressive Christians and Satanists have similar expressions. I really think that, like, Satanism is part of Christian heritage. Like, A, they invented it, but B, also, like, Satanism is just sort of a return to, like, progressive Christianity through a different path, through, like, an expression of, like, trauma. And it's basically, you have progressive Christians, and if you're always in the progressive Christian church, or you find your way there, great. But some people, like, they're oppressed by this weird regressive Christianity and find their way back to those progressive Christian values through Satanism as a way of sort of cleansing the culture with hellfire so that we can engage with it in a way that's a little bit less, we're, like, sort of mutating it so it's a little bit easier to deal with for us, and a little bit more transformative, and so that it's more like a reclamation of stuff, you know. Don't know how much that makes sense. I'm just sort of riffing at this point. I'm getting tired, but yeah, like, that's where my brain goes. But yeah, I think it's important to note that, like, the right is really not great at working together. And I think that's why Pierre is silent now, is that he's sort of trapped between all of these larger right-wing powers that he's been courting, that are so much bigger than him and are in power where he's not. That he's sort of, he doesn't have a way out of this situation, and I think he's panicking a little bit, you know? Also, Steph, you're still here, yeah. Lucy's gonna be here in a bit to pick up some stuff and charge their phone, just so you know. Yeah. Lucy left some stuff when they were here. But yeah, so, like, I'm encouraged by the fact that Pierre's having a hard time navigating the situation. It's going to have an effect on the conservative momentum. And that leads us into the next thing I wanted to cover, because the conservatives have been leading polling by a wide margin. But as things keep progressing, I think Pierre going silent had an impact, but also Trudeau stepping down. People are starting to really like Mark Carney as a potential Liberal leader. And he's fine. He's a neoliberal. He's going to neoliberal his way through everything, but he's fine. Yeah. I mean, Canada, we have our own problems, but I mean, I'd rather be here than south of the border right now. That is for sure. You're gonna have like a hard 4 years, but like hopefully we can fight our battles, keep up here okay, and then use that as a way to push back against the right-wing slide that's going on globally. That if we can have one bulwark to stop that constant slide and start pushing the other way. You're not in the US. Oh yeah, you said English is right. Where roughly are you, if you don't mind me asking? You don't have to if you're not comfortable saying, but anyhow. But there are so many countries going right now. Romania, right, gotcha. Oh yeah, you must be like fucking the Ukraine war being right on your doorstep probably is fucking spooky as shit too. There are a number of places south of Canada. I know, Pine, how dare you? I've been to them. Alright, yeah. I don't know like a whole lot about Romania. It's the fish-shaped country, yes. It's the country that in a lot of vampire myth stuff is wildly misrepresented and treated badly, yes. But yeah. Oh, the smell of blood and gunpowder. Yeah, great. The great smell. But yeah, so at least for some good news is we'll cover some good news, some good Canadian political news. There's two things. Anxious about the war. Yeah. I do not blame you. Hopefully that shit fucking if Putin could just fuck off into the sun, that would be great. That would be super duper great. But here's some good Canadian political news. Thailand legalized queer marriage? Fuck yeah! They got canceled? Oh yeah. That sounds exhausting. Yes, so good Canadian news.
Within 7 points of Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party, and when we factor in the margin of error, they are under 5. Here is the results of the poll from Ecos. Ecos is probably one of the more reputable pollsters in Canada. They did a poll from January 17th to January 21st, notably during the Trump inauguration, and it puts the Liberals at 32% to the Conservatives 39%, and the New Democrats are sitting at 14%. There is a margin of error of 3.2, which means when we factor in the best possible case scenario for the Liberals, it puts them within 4 points. This is the closest the Liberals have been to the Conservatives since Pierre Poilievre has ascended into the leadership, and this is without a leader, I'll remind you. The Liberals currently don't have a leader, and they're within 5 points of Pierre's Conservatives. Now, there is a lot to unpack with this poll, but most importantly, this is a poll that happened after we saw a lot of the bullshit from Donald Trump and Elon Musk in the United States.
Yes.
Remember, the last Ecos poll put the Conservatives almost 30 points ahead of the federal Liberals. And over the course of a month, because Ecos polls monthly, they've recouped that and are now within shooting distance of the Conservatives. It's also important to note that this is a popular vote poll, and when we model this into seats, this puts the Conservatives into weak minority territory. We're talking a minority government where they only have a 10 to 15 seat advantage over the Liberals, which means that the third and fourth and fifth place parties might have an opportunity to form a coalition formally to stop the Conservative Party, if it's that weak.
Which would be great.
Also, this is one poll. We will get more polling as we go through the winter months here, but ECOS is one that we do not blink at. They typically have a good indication of the way the shift is going, and they are detecting a Liberal shift. I told you guys there would be a squeeze when we get closer to the election, and if this turns out to be true, and this is replicated with Leger and Abascus and Angus Reid, that squeeze has happened. And the Liberals, don't even have a leader yet. Let's see what happens.
I'm really, really encouraged by this because I'm excited to see that narrowing margin. A Conservative minority that's that weak, we could get a coalition government, but also it means that regardless of what happens, if they're within 10 to 15 seats of the next party, the Liberals, that means that most of the worst shit that we don't want the Conservatives to do, they cannot do. They cannot do anything about reproductive rights. They can't do anything about LGBTQ rights. A lot of the worst case scenario shit that the Conservatives could possibly try and do if they're in a weak minority, any minority government really, but a weak minority especially, we could yank. Like, I feel like the NDP might go for a coalition government. So I'm really, really, really encouraged by this, especially without a leader. It goes to show that I think a lot of the people that were considering voting Conservative didn't want to vote for Pierre. They just didn't want Trudeau. So I think Trudeau stepping down was an extremely good move. And they just need to pick a leader that's not going to tip the scales too much the wrong way. Steph, Lucy's here if you want to go down and let them in. I will give you their stuff. Yeah. Because I know you have to head out soon, but at least if you could let them in and then tell them they can hang out in my room if they want, if they don't want to be close to where I'm on camera. I'm hoping for Carney. Yeah, Carney would be good. Carney is as unoffensive as I think we're gonna get. He's not as socially progressive as I would like, but he's in the Liberal Party. That wasn't gonna happen anyway. As far as a actual Liberal candidate, I think he's a really good choice. And I would not be mad seeing him Prime Minister. It would feel like this would feel like the going from Trudeau to Carney would feel like going from Chrétien to Paul Martin. That's kind of what this feels like. I just hope we don't slide into Harper territory after that. The votes were between a progressive woman and a fascist who had a love for Putin, and his campaign were paid for the Russians. Holy fuck, if he would have won, we would have been fucked straight up, no joke. Yeah, that would have been not great. Progressive woman is exciting, but yeah, it's really scary to be like, this really exciting thing and this really awful thing, and it could go either way, and I'm really worried. Yeah, that stuff sucks. I would love for Carney to be Prime Minister, as much as he's not, again, he's no politician is going to fully reflect my values. I am very progressive. My idea of how to solve problems is very skewed, far outside of the Overton window, far to the left. I'm fully aware of that. I'm for full justice system reform and a bunch of other shit that's just not going to happen. Not anytime soon. But you know what? I'm not stressed about it. I'm chill with it. We'll slowly push the envelope further left. I'm okay making incremental gains. Her girl's a lesbian. She said she would love her no matter what, because God tells us to love our neighbors like we love themselves. Aw, that's so lovely. That's really nice. That would be nice. My kind of leader would never be elected. I just want someone I can work with. Yeah, we've had this conversation, Pint, before, and think a bunch of the people who I've talked to before, we've had this conversation of you you pick the leader. When you're very progressive, you're not picking someone to represent you. You're picking who you want your opponent to be for the next couple of years. I would much rather fight Mark Carney and try and pull him left, because I feel like that's doable. I feel like if you can make, because he's very economics based, I feel like if you can make an economic case for left-wing policies, he would consider it. Or if he thinks that he has to work with the NDP or whatever, he would consider it. That would be great. Pierre's a fully fucking lost cause, and I don't want to have to fucking fight that. I don't want my harm reduction to be stopping a hemorrhage. I want my harm reduction to be maybe getting some concessions now and then. I would much rather that. I'm anti-government and shit, but that woman spit something. Yeah. And he's not reactionary. Yes, and he can speak well. And I think especially because he's got a lot of experience with economics, especially like economics in really complicated political situations, because he's had to deal with Brexit before. I think he would be a good person to have handle Trump for the next couple of years, and handle that situation. I think he's as qualified as we're gonna get, right? And as much as I like the NDP, I don't think Jagmeet Singh is ready to face Trump. I don't think this is. Again, if I was wrong and the NDP won, I'd fucking be through the moon. But like, I just don't know how politically feasible that would be, even if they won, because they've never been leader before. Then this is like kind of complicated. Yeah. I just feel bad because so much of that was like manipulated too. But yeah, I don't think this country is ready to elect a brown man. No. And considering all of the Indian election interference and foreign influence in the Conservative Party, I think specifically our country is unlikely to vote for a Sikh man specifically. I think that there's enough like actual people who would be not okay with that. That like that's a Quebec would never vote for him. Yeah. So like I feel like that would be a struggle, which sucks because like I really do like Jagmeet Singh. Again, he's not a perfect reflection of my values and my beliefs, but you know, when he likes Wheel of Time, so that's a vote in his favor. Yeah, can't we elect a woman? That'd be great. But yeah, I just think when Jagmeet speaks, sometimes he gets a little bit too much into the like competitive political stuff. But overall, like the policies he supports, I'm usually in favor of. Ooh, yay! Yay, we love a pro-gay mayor. The Toronto mayor is pretty good on that too. And then other Canadian political news as we get it more local, and then we're gonna talk Hope, and then maybe I'll play some Rivals if I still have time. And that from my best friend? Fuck yeah. But yes, so we may have a provincial election in Ontario as well. So it has to be announced on a Wednesday, so it's probably this upcoming Wednesday. Ooh, that's really cool. Pride Disco sounds really fun. Sources tell CBC News that Ontario Premier Doug Ford could trigger a provincial election as early as next week. Ontario's opposition leaders say a snap election isn't needed more than a year ahead of schedule. Doug Ford could trigger an Ontario election as early as next week. They expect the election to be called in the first week of February, but that it could happen earlier. Ford has repeatedly said he believes he needs a new mandate from Ontarians to respond to the potential economic devastation that could be wrought by President Trump, imposing a 25% tariff. This despite holding a large majority at Queen's Park, where legislature is currently on break. On Monday night, Ford's chief of staff, Patrick Sackville, emailed PC staffers telling them the government needs a strong mandate to stand up for Ontario, adding the stronger the mandate, the better. Ford told reporters to stay tuned when asked about the election call Wednesday. We need a mandate from the people. We need a mandate to possibly spend billions of dollars to protect people's jobs, to protect businesses, and to protect communities. There's only one group of people, one group that is going to give me the mandate, and that's the people. That's democracy, Ford said. As he was going into his office, the Premier added, off the record, you guys are going to love it. Ontario's opposition leaders have disputed Ford's rationale for an early election call, arguing he already has a strong mandate with more than a year left in his term and holding the role of chair of the Council of the Federation, which represents Canada's premiers. He has a mandate. He's the premier of a province. He has a majority government. He can pass any legislation he basically wants to, said Ontario NDP leader Merritt Stiles. Stiles accused Ford of attempting to pull one over on the people of Ontario by floating the possibility of a snap election in the middle of winter to distract Ontarians from other issues like the province's strained healthcare system. This isn't about standing up to Trump. This is about Mr. Ford wanting to gain more seats, Stiles said Wednesday. Ontario Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie said Tuesday that an election now would create chaos at a critical time when the province needs to present a unified front. President Trump's tariffs should be treated as a threat, not as an excuse to call an unnecessary early election, Crombie said in a speech at the Royal Ontario Municipal Association conference in Toronto on Tuesday. Ontario's next election was supposed to happen in 2026, but speculation that Ford will call an early vote has been swirling since last spring, long before Trump won the U.S. election. Ontarians, meanwhile, will soon get a $200 rebate checks from the government, which Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie called a pre-election bribe. Yeah, I also wish we could get rid of them. Oh yeah, living with parents is rough. Earlier in the day, Vic Fedeli, Minister of Economic Development and Trade, wouldn't speculate on if or when an election would be called. Fedeli said the Ford government has been laser focused on protecting Ontario jobs in the face of the looming tariff threat. These are all very, very serious issues, and our job is to protect Ontario's jobs, Ontario workers, Fedeli said following a funding announcement in Toronto Wednesday morning. Fedeli said he doesn't have a campaign office set up at the moment, but is prepared if an election is called. I'm ready anytime the Premier tells us we're going to go on campaign. Ontario's fixed state election law explicitly allows the Premier to dissolve the legislature and call an election anytime before the 4-year mandate is up. Ontario's Election Act dictates that a writ for an election, which launches a 28-day long election period, must be dated on Wednesday. Buddy, what Ontario jobs? Yeah. So I think the important thing to note is I have seen people speculating, and I think this is reasonable, is Ontario is a bellwether province, right? So Ontario tends to vote provincially the opposite of whatever is federally. So if Ford thinks that Poilievre is going to win, he's going to want an election early because he'd rather be holding an election while technically the Liberals are still in power than hold an election when the Conservatives are in power, because then Ontario is likely to lean Liberal. That's generally what happens in Ontario, is whatever is the federal government is, we vote the opposite provincially. And the idea is that then there's conflicting values between Queen's Park and Ottawa, because we're fucking stupid, yes. And this is like very much a rural Ontario thing too. The idea is that if there's conflict between Ottawa and Queen's Park, that we're going to have, the parties have to work together, and it'll hold them away from their worst excesses, rather than having a liberal or conservative where they're like too aligned. And like, I get where that argument comes from. I think that's a stupid way to vote. But I do understand where that's coming from. It's just, like, from a theoretical level, I just don't think practically that's how it works. I think voting for the better representation is what you should be doing. Never actually worked? Yes. Sometimes I fucking hate this province. Yes. Same with, like, my least favorite thing that this province does is in rural Ontario being like, oh, we're never voting NDP because of that one time. The one time we voted for the NDP and they fucked it up, so we're never voting NDP again. And I'm like, okay, for one, the guy who's leader of the NDP party when the NDP party fucked up is now Liberal. So shut up. Secondly, oh yeah, the NDP fucked up the one time they were in power. How is that different from the every time the Conservatives are in power? It's not even just rural Ontario? Yeah. No, I know. There are parts of Ontario that do vote NDP. That's usually the far, far north. Ontario, like, the city usually goes Liberal. Like Toronto itself. Yeah, I mean, this province is weird. But I see why Ford would be calling an election now, especially as he's pushing back against Trump. He looks better now than he normally does, because like people are seeing Doug Ford go like, okay, I'm gonna stand up for Ontario and the rest of Canada against Trump, and I'm gonna be loud about it. And I think he's hoping that we see that and not him stomping on the rights of municipalities and ripping out bike lanes and selling off Ontario Place and the Science Center to like random ass foreign developers. And him like selling off the healthcare system. I think people are like, he's hoping people will forget. Someone used to live in an NDP haven that got that shit all the fucking time. Yeah. I am somewhat encouraged though. Like, I don't want to have to deal with another year of Ford, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, also calling an election during the middle of winter means that turnout will probably be low. Turnout was low last time, and it wasn't in the middle of a fucking snowstorm in a polar vortex situation. So I think he's probably also hoping that if turnout is low, usually low turnout means conservatives sweep. So he's probably hoping also for a little bit of that effect as well. So we will see. I mean, if that happens, that's gonna happen real soon. Because it'll either happen next week or like early February. So we will see. If there's a provincial election, I will do what I can to cover some provincial stuff. But really, I don't think there's anything but like is super like that like we wouldn't have heard before. Like, yeah, Ford sucks. He's corrupt. He sells up. It's really ironic seeing him wearing these like Ontario's not for sale fucking hats to try and talk about Trump when he sells out Ontario all the fucking time to his friends. But yeah, we'll see where that ends up going, you know. I don't imagine it'll go well, I guess. I'm not encouraged. But seeing the Liberals do better federally, I have hope there. That's nice. That's encouraging. And speaking of hope, this is the part I really wanted to make sure I got to today. We're gonna cover Satanic Fragment's Substack article on Satanic Hope, and I'm also gonna link this in chat if people want to read this in their own time as well. Because it's a really good post if you want to like share it around, or you want to follow Fragment on Substack. Honestly, Fragment constantly encourages me to think better about things. Our conversations are always fantastic. He's an excellent minister and a lovely friend. And I think a lot of folks would really benefit from, even if you're not a Satanist, like the way that he communicates and thinks about things. He's very deep into philosophy. He's a deep thinker, and I adore him so much. But we're gonna read about this article, and I think it's well timed. I don't know if he probably meant it, but we've been talking about hope together in our DMs for a bit, and this came out a week ago, January 16th. So yeah, it's very well timed, and I think it's important to have hope when we're reading the news and dealing with all of the shit that's going on, because shit's difficult right now, and I think having a grounding for how to approach all of this stuff so that you're not just like floundering and panicking is good. So we're gonna go through this. It's not super duper long, but Plague in an Ancient City by Michael Swiris. Believed to depict the plague of Athens. Oil on canvas. Courtesy of the LA County Museum of Art. Speaking of, I hope the fucking wildfires go the fuck away. That would be great. I have no idea what's awaiting me or what will happen when all this ends. For the moment, I know this. There are sick people and they need curing. From The Plague by Albert Camus. Things are bad and they're only going to get worse. We crossed the 1.5 Celsius global warming threshold in 2024. Religious extremism is on the rise. America has re-embraced manifest destiny. Western democracies are rapidly falling to illiberalism, and we sit on the thresholds of financial crises, expanding wars, and ecological disaster. As temple Satanists, we are duty-bound by our beliefs to see things for what they are. Things are bad, and they are only going to get worse. But we are equally bound to stand against injustice, even when defeat seems inevitable. Our Satan, the Satan of Milton, Byron, Poe, and Anatole France, did not accept defeat, nor shall we. By arming ourselves with hope and compassion, we will be well equipped to endure this unholy war. And keep in mind, if you're not a Satanist, read into this whatever symbol helps you feel as rebellious as you can, that makes you feel like fighting back against tyranny. If that's Jesus Christ, like, he did this too, right? There's a lot of simpatico between Jesus and Satan, or at least the Satan of my Satanism. So, like, if there's another symbol that works better for you, that makes this resonate with you more, feel free to substitute that in. We're just coming from our religious perspective, but feel free, whatever makes you feel that, like, left-wing progressive fire to change the world for the better, you know? Fate will bind you only if you let it do what is necessary, not because it is written. Yeah, and the Ankh and peace, yeah. Life and peace are really good things to be focused on. And yeah, Manifest Destiny is like a whole thing as well. It's based in the American, like, Manifest Destiny is the American idea that they are destined to conquer the world, or at least the Americas, that land is theirs to take and to conquer and to control. Trump has brought it up a couple times when talking about taking over Canada and Panama. So that's kind of where that's coming from. To start with, I want to address hope. Proper satanic hope is something that has to be learned. Growing up in the demiurge's hegemony, we are taught that hope is a wish, a prayer, a magical thing that we have no control over. But that is a lie, a deception, told to make you feel powerless. Hope is not a mere feeling, but seeing what needs to be changed and then working to change it. Hope is material, malleable. It is a clay to be formed, a hammer to shape metal, a chisel to carve rock. Hope is an opportunity. Given hope is real, material, and empowering, I ask you to start defining hope like this. 1. What you want to happen has to be possible. It doesn't mean what you want is probable, just that the laws of nature do not prevent it. You can hope to get a better job, you can't hope to grow wings and fly. Nor can you hope to be declared the long-lost heir to the throne of Denmark and be made king. You can materially affect the desired outcome. This means that your actions must have a noticeable effect on the outcome of what you are hoping for. So winning the Powerball isn't a reasonable hope by this definition, even though it is materially possible. While getting your preferred candidate elected would be, as you can vote, donate, and campaign on their behalf. Keep in mind, the effect can be very small. A single vote and a few memes shared isn't a lot, but it is a lot more than passively buying a lottery ticket and expecting a random number to come up in your favor. This is satanic hope, a hope grounded in reality and empowerment. It is not helplessness, a pleading for someone else to fix things. This is a hope you and we can own and do something about. It is not glorious, but it is achievable, and achievement is greater than any fantasy. By grounding ourselves in satanic hope, compassion flows so much more naturally. Divorcing compassion from the illusory categories of politics, race, and creed, we can meet people where they are and meet their needs without getting caught up in pedantic delays, not worrying about the correct in-group signaling. In this time of crisis, this is the radical compassion we need. Meeting people at their needs is the only way we can rebuild trust. This, of course, will take time. We didn't get to the spot we are in today overnight. It took at least 50 years of effort, if not nearly a century, for illiberal forces to drag us to this point, and could very well take another 50 years or more to undo the harms inflicted upon us since 2001. To exercise satanic hope and compassion, we need to operate within our abilities. That means we go small, and small can be quite small. A book club or monthly coffee hangout, when done with intention, are great starting points. There are also great mutual aid organizations you can get involved with. Food Not Bombs, community pantries and gardens, your local humane societies, and TNR groups are only a few non-TST organizations that do great work who you can help with. Within TST, you can join twice monthly Hellmouth services. Note, I am a member of the TST Religious Services, so I do have a vested interest in your coming. Join early discussion groups within your local congregation, connect with folks on social media, follow your favorite satanic creator, or even become one yourself. These small grassroots things have an incredibly high effectiveness of changing minds. As Daryl Davis showed, minds can be changed by taking time and meeting people where they are. So get involved, go small, change the world. Admittedly, this is a lot to ask. There are those who cling to their illusory categories even as the weight of them pulls them deeper into despair. Worse yet, when you cry for help, they may throw you an anchor rather than a life vest because they can no longer tell the difference between the two. That is where reason comes into play. To continue with my illusions of drowning, you need to make sure you are safe before you can help them. You need to approach them from the back, not the front. A drowning person will try and climb you to get out of the water. That means no lecturing, insulting, or antagonistic behavior. If you can't save them, then you should not make it harder for others to do so. You also need to accept that some people will just be lost. Mourn their loss, but do not dwell on that for too long, as there is much to do. As I said at the beginning, things are bad and they are only going to get worse. But if we take ownership of our hope, ground it in reality, we will be okay even if the world isn't. Satanic hope and going small isn't a glorious revolution. It is more like planting seeds so our grandchildren will have shade to sit in. While we may never get to enjoy that tree, it is still a moral good to plant it, and we will feel better knowing we tried rather than gave up. I fucking love this article. Monk not only represents life, but also death and reincarnation. The reason as to why I wear it is because it looks cool, but I'm also not afraid of death. It is natural, so it pushed me to do good, if that makes sense. Yeah, that makes tons of sense to me. Like, knowing that you have limited time, so you might as well make the most of the time you have to improve the short lives of those around you makes complete sense to me. I used to wear an Ankh as well when I was in high school. Sometimes you just need to choose not to give them your attention and focus on your joy. Yeah. I remember planting a tree and bastards cut it down. You plant another one. You just keep going. You don't let them stop you. And I think, like, in this article, right, there's a couple things, right? There's figuring out what hope is and having that hope be grounded in reality and productivity. It's something that you can do that's reasonable and rational to try and do, right? But also understanding what is unproductive and making sure that you are meeting people. Sorry, I don't know why I have hiccups. But meeting people where they are, right? And making sure that when you're engaging with people that you're not lecturing them, you're not tearing down solidarity, but you're building it, right? So, like, an example of that is with, like, the Luigi situation, right? Ah, Pie, thank you. Jesus Christ. Did that help with the hiccups? Honestly, I think it did. I think it did. Thanks. I appreciate it. I think. Thank you for the fucking Korok, Pie. You're great. Sorry, Dolly. Yeah, we have jump scares here. It's mostly for when I'm playing scary games, but occasionally it's just jump scare time. It's Scarazura time. Oh yeah, I can put the ears on. Dolly, can you guess where I got this the idea for this from? Because I got scared. Yeah. There we go. I have cat ears on now. I wonder where. Yeah. I'm like, that's a fun idea. I have like 1 billion pairs of cat ears. But yeah. So yeah, with like the Luigi situation, right? God, I got flustered. Pie. Like, you could attack people, right? And that reaction is attack. That's so many ears. Like, actually, if I think about it, I have 1, 2, I have 3 pairs, I think, of cat ears and a pair of rabbit ears. 2 pairs of rabbit ears. What am I here for? To bully me. That's what you're here for. which is good. I need it sometimes. I need to stay humble. But yeah, so like with the Luigi situation, right? We had people that are getting class consciousness for the first time. They're for the first time they're seeing, we're building solidarity between the left and the right by going like, yes, we both have a shared, for lack of a better term, enemy. We have a shared problem that we need to deal with, and we can understand like those nuances together. And it is tempting to shit on those people for not getting there earlier, but you don't want to punish people for the behavior you want. Anytime someone does something that you like, don't yell at them for not doing it enough, or doing it earlier, or not doing it better. Congratulate baby steps. They're going in the direction you want, don't push them back the other way, okay? So like, it's important that as long as people, like obviously there are people who are in the middle of being hateful bigots, and they may be beyond your ability to reach. That doesn't mean they're completely lost to anyone. If someone is beyond your reach, disengage and move on. Just say like, this is not productive, I'm moving on. And move the fuck on. Block and do something else. Save your energy for where it's going to be productive. There are other people who might be able to reach them though, or they might have their moment. Like, there are people who saw Elon Musk faking his gamer scores, right? By like having this really high level character that he never played, that he paid someone else to do it, right? And these people are finally opening their eyes to that Elon Musk might be a bit of a grifter and a liar. Don't yell at them for it taking that for them to open their eyes. Because a lot of times it does take something that hits us emotionally, that hits us personally, that we know personally, rather than something that's more abstract. And it's good to have these people starting to move in our direction and to start moving into the fold a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Like when your parents yell at you, like we all know what that feels like. And it doesn't help. Hope is the thing with feathers with an avian dinosaur. That's actually kind of awesome. I kind of love that. But yeah, it's always good to like give people little baby steps. And that's like what I try and do here, right? Is like a lot of you don't know about like Aspie supremacy, or you don't know about Satanism, or you don't know about like how the Holocaust affected disabled people. Like, I'm not going to be mad at you that you didn't know that, because I wasn't born knowing that. I had to learn. Like, I don't know things about what's going on in like Romania, and now I'm learning stuff, and like I love learning stuff from you guys too. That's awesome. Like, you guys know shit that I don't know. But I think it's really, really important to sometimes the rational, practical hope is the hope of gaining allies. And sometimes you have to be like, is it possible to gain this ally? And what thing can I do that's going to help build that allyship with this person, right? Our food is always on point. Fuck yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, I'm in Toronto. There's probably some good Romanian food around. I should find and try some. You can last for hours. Yeah. Cold environments always have really filling food. I have noticed that. Sometimes hoping is knowing that this will end, because all things end. Yeah, exactly. Like, sometimes the hope is just the comfort that, like, this isn't forever. And that cycles come and go, and while there's suffering, we can mitigate it, right? And every small thing we do, like, makes a difference. And I think, like, when despair kicks in, realize that while you can't save millions of people, if in your one life you've made existence less bad for one other person, you've done well. Grit our teeth, push, and do shit about it, no matter how big or small. Yeah, exactly. And like, there's plenty that we can be doing, right? We can plant a tree to help with global warming. We can push our politicians to do better. We can offer our pocket change to the homeless person we walk by that needs it, without judgment and without condition. Like, there are little things we can do. We can talk to our neighbors. A really, really good thing you can do is get to know your neighbors, and even if you don't know everyone in your neighborhood, do you live in an apartment building? Do you know the people in your building? If it's a small building, do you know the people in your hall? If it's a bigger one, like, do you know the people who live near you? And like, I don't know, bring them some food sometime. Build community. And like, obviously if someone's like actively a danger to you, like, keep yourself safe, but be reasonable about like, are they a danger to you, to like your safety and well-being, or are they just annoying? Because like, everyone in the building, I love everyone on that side of the building, people below me, they're annoying. They're not really an active threat most of the time. They're just annoying. I did help emotionally my friends. Yeah, and the thing is like, that matters, right? Because A, you're helping that person and that matters in and of itself, but also like, every contribution they make now is bolstered by what you did to help. The amount of times I've helped a homeless person with money, oh my god, I just cannot go without giving them something after I see them on the streets because shit is rough. Yeah, like, I try not to share like stuff I do that's good because I don't want to be doing it for clout. But like, I used to live in like a really rough neighborhood, and I was paid in cash a lot, so I always had like a bit of change in my pocket. And anytime I saw a homeless person, I just give them all the change in my pocket. And this is when I was like starving poor. I was not eating. It's not good. I was very, very poor. Don't regret it for a minute. Every time I saw someone who needed help, I just gave it. And the unfortunate thing is, like, I'd see another homeless person be like, I'm sorry, I just gave what I had to the last person. And now I don't often have change in my pocket, but I haven't told anybody this before, but there was a time this past summer where there was someone who was homeless, who was in distress, looking for a phone they lost. I don't think they were like homeless. They were just like living in like a community shelter and stuff, very, very much obviously struggling though, right? They lost their phone, was freaking out, and I'm like, hey, what's your phone number? Let me see if I can call it and see if it rings, right? Because then if it rings, then we can find it. If not, then yeah, maybe someone took it because you like had to leave some of your stuff. They seemed like they were like transient homeless sort of thing. So I called their phone, no ring. They were really upset, really freaked out. So they're like, oh man, like, I need that and stuff. I'm like, look, I can't find your phone, but are you hungry? And they're like, yeah, I haven't eaten in a bit. I'm like, okay, do you want to go to Timmy's and we'll get you something to eat? And they're like, oh my god, really? I'm like, yeah, just order whatever you want. Because I'm like, I don't have any cash on me, but like, Timmy's is right there. I can just get you some food. So we went in and I'm just like, literally order as much as you want, anything you want. Like, you can get, and so she was like, you know, she wanted some coffee. It was hot, so it was like an iced coffee. Wanted like a sandwich. And then she was like, oh, is it okay if like I have a donut too? Because like I just kind of want a treat. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So got her some food, chatted for a bit. I was on my way to something, so I couldn't stay like super duper long, but I was like, hey, I bought you some food, so like, feel free to use the bathroom, wash your hands and stuff. And I'm like, you know, I had enough time that I could stop and make sure that this person felt like someone cared about them, right? And it's like, I have so many things going on in my life that I can't always stop and help, but when I have a moment, I'm like, you know what, I have a little bit of extra money right now, like, I can, like, if I'm gonna go out for drinks with friends and I'm gonna spend like fucking $40 on alcohol I don't need to be drinking, I can spend like $15 on someone who's like hungry and needs help. I'll just have one less drink tonight. That's fine. There's this lady that stopped me on my way to uni, and she had asked for some money and to get some medicine. I didn't have change on me, only my car, but man, I felt so bad I couldn't help. Yeah, like, and sometimes I'm just like genuinely like I don't have like a wallet on me. I just have my Metro Pass, or it's like, you know, I'm sorry, I don't have cash on me or anything like that. But if I have time, I do try and do what I can when I can. Like, obviously, like, these are individual solutions to a systemic problem. And ideally, like, the solution would be getting these people secure, stable housing. One of my proudest moves is giving you some of my grocery cards. Genuinely, I don't think you understand how much that, like, kept me alive. Like, genuinely, I don't think you realize, like, how badly I was doing when you did that. Like, I don't think I've ever really, like, properly thanked you for that either. Like, it meant a lot to me at the time. Like, those, like, you and the parents giving me grocery cards, like, grocery store gift cards, is, like, what kept me alive for a couple years there. And I mean, I don't think it's sad that, like, you're really proud about making sure that, like, someone you care about was fed when they were struggling. Like, I think that's honestly a great thing to have done, and I really appreciate it. And like, all of the good I've been able to do, I love you too. But like, you know, all of the good I've been able to do is because I'm still here because you helped me, right? Sad because I could have given you more. I mean, you gave me enough, right? Like, I was okay. I was okay because of what you gave me, right? And I mean, it's not like that you don't have struggles and stuff too, right? Like, I've said to one of my best friends that I'm the type of person that if I had an apartment, I would let my friends crash rent free for as long as they need. Or if I saw a homeless person, I'd let them use my shower and try and find them a job. Because we need to be kinder to more people. Yeah. Like, I think it's really important to make sure that we're doing what we can to support each other, and have compassion. And at least, like, even if you don't have the means to help someone in the moment, I think as long as you recognize that homeless people and people who are struggling are human beings and treat them with the kindness and compassion that you would give anybody, that's kind of the start. And like, the amount of difference it makes to just have, when you're that poor and struggling that much, to just have someone treat you like a human being, and not just step over you like you're trash, like, makes a massive difference. Like, a lot of the nicest things I've done for people who have been struggling is literally just like, they needed someone to talk to and I just sat there and listened. And like, didn't freak out when they needed to talk to somebody, right? And like, obviously, again, like, there are some nuances there, right? Like, there are definitely some times where I've seen, especially like, men on the street where I'm like, okay, I'm disabled and small and femme, and like, you know, this could become dangerous for me because they're acting erratically, and I'm not going to be able to tell if that's, like, if their mood shifts, I might not be able to tell. So it might not, like, if I'm alone and it's in the middle of the night, like, maybe I, like, take care of myself first, and that's where, you know, you can't save everybody. You have to be within reason. Like, there are some times where, like, I can't do certain things because, you know, I only have so much capacity, and I know that, like, my physical safety is not always guaranteed. But if I know that I'm gonna be okay, why not help, right? It's like, can I reduce harm and still be safe after this? Then sure. Is this someone who just like clearly is lonely and needs to talk? Then like, yeah, why not let them talk to me? If it's someone who's like being super erratic, where like, you know, they're dealing with some like anger or some pain or something, like, I'm not gonna jeer at them, I'm not gonna film them, I'm not gonna post that on the internet, I'm not gonna make fun of them, I'm just gonna give them their space. But I might not actively engage because A, I don't want to make it worse, I'm not qualified for that, and B, like, I'm not sure where their head's at, I might just give them some space. And like, also sometimes with homeless people, they don't have the privacy to have a meltdown in the privacy of their own house. They don't have a house. Every time they have a bad moment, it's in full view of everybody, right? So sometimes they just actually need the privacy. So like, you know, if they're asking you for something, like respond. If they seem like they need help, help them. But like if they seem like they just need some fucking privacy, like if I see like a homeless person peeing in a fucking alley, I will not go down that alley. Not because I don't think they're a person, but because I want to give them the basic dignity of not having someone stare at them while they're doing that. Just give them their time. Or if I have to go down that way, I will wait. Bye, Steph. Bye. How you doing? Also, is Lucy still charging stuff? You there? Okay. I'm still alive.
Oh, kitty.
Probably head out.
Oh, it's so far.
Okay. No stress. If you need to like chill or whatever, that's fine. I'm also probably gonna be done in like a bit. So. Okay. I'm getting tired. So I'm probably gonna raid out in like
Okay.
like 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. People in the house. Steffi's just heading out. But yeah. So like yeah, help when you can. You can't always, but it reminds me of especially because in the article like Fragment used the like metaphor of drowning, right? Use that as an analogy. And that reminds me of like I think that partially comes from conversations that I had with him. But it reminds me of like when I've had first aid training and I did lifeguard training and stuff. And we were taught when we're doing lifeguard training that you have to ensure your safety first, because if you put yourself at risk, now there's 2 victims for EMS to help when they eventually arrive, and you may complicate the rescue of the other person. So you need to make sure you're not pouring from an empty cup, that you're at least stable. You're not going to be perfect. None of us, I don't think anybody who's watching me on Twitch is in a position to be like, oh yeah, I'm doing great and I'm making like fucking 200K a year and I'm solid. It's like, okay, we're all struggling a little bit, but just making sure that you're not putting yourself in a precarious position, right? That you're giving from a position of stability, if not comfort, that you're not going to be in crisis from trying to help, right? Yeah, swimming is fun. It's difficult to learn, especially as an adult, because I learned really, really young, because like around here there's just lakes fucking everywhere. I grew up on the water, but swimming is really, really, really fun. And it's a good safety thing to have too, if you like find yourself around rivers or water or whatever. It's good to know, like that's part of the reason my parents taught me, is because there's just like lakes and rivers and shit everywhere where I grew up. So like Ontario is full of water. So you need to know how to swim just for safety. So. Bye. I'm in my 20s, it ain't that tough. Yeah, 20s isn't too bad. But the most important thing, honestly, about learning to swim is really just learn to float. If you can float, that's like the main thing. And then everything comes from that. So if you can just kind of like starfish out in the water and be comfortable just laying there, and you know you're okay if you just fucking spread out, then when it comes to swimming, you at least know, worst case scenario, a position you can get yourself into where you'll be okay. Once you can manage floating, then you can try and move around while you're doing that. But just about breathing too, yeah. Some of that's kind of instinctive, but like, yeah, you just want to make sure that you're breathing. Like, the more air in your lungs, the more buoyant you're gonna be. Because you're basically turning yourself into a big pool floaty. So like, You just want to breathe. You don't want to breathe like super fast, but you want to breathe like not super deep breaths. You just want to breathe like consistently and kind of keep a little bit of extra air in your lungs. So you breathe in deep and then you just kind of like breathe with like half of your lungs full. And then like, you know, hold your breath when you're underwater. If you need to, blow out your nose so the water doesn't go up your nose. You can get nose plugs if you need to too, especially when you're starting out. But like, it's not too difficult. Just lift your head above water. As long as your mouth's clear, you can breathe okay. I can hold my air for like a couple of minutes if shit goes south. Yeah, and like when you're learning to swim, like swim in like a pool, because then it's still. But yeah, like I've swam in some like gnarly shit like as a kid. But like, especially like if you're not dealing with like a really fast flowing river or the ocean, or like the Great Lakes, which are essentially inland freshwater seas. If you're not dealing with like super deep bodies of water, like you should be okay. Like a little pond or a little, like a slow little river, you should be okay. I don't know what the water situation's like is in Romania, but like it's not super duper difficult. Yeah, you just kind of gotta trust the process. Yeah. It's kind of like an Ontario rite of passage is swimming in some bullshit. Saltwater is good because the minerals give you buoyancy. Yes. It makes it a lot easier. I learned swimming in freshwater, which is way harder. But also, yeah, like, yeah. You just kind of gotta chill. It's not too hard. I think it's a mix. Okay, yeah, that's fair. But yeah, I just think that like moving forward, it's good to just lifeguard test in open water. That is bullshit. I at least did mine in a pool. All the water that we drink is mineral. Doesn't matter if it's flat or sparkly. Yeah, I mean, completely purified water is actually really not good for your body, but because there is water that has nothing in it, but you wouldn't drink that. It's not good for you because it like osmosises all of the shit out of your body. It's not great. But yeah, so like just going forward through all of this stuff, just keep in mind that oh man, not changing the requirements sucks. But yeah, just keep in mind that like you have to think of something that's possible to change and how and what actions you can do that can change it, even so small, and focus on that. And like keep your scope small, like keep your focus, and you'll be able to get through the next 4 years and the rest of your life. It's just about building that resiliency and building community and working on stuff together and starting small, right? And I believe in all of you that you can like get through anything. Like we've all gotten through some shit before. We can keep doing it. And then yeah, the last thing I want to cover, I don't think I'm gonna game tonight because I'm getting really fucking tired because I haven't been sleeping well. I was up late last night. But I want to cover TST's Guide to Effective Protest. I've covered this before, but I do just want to briefly go over it because I think these are really good to keep in mind as we go forward when you're addressing stuff that's going on. I really love it here. I love having you here. You're great. It's great having you in here. I mean, we always have great chats when we're over on DTune stream. Yeah, I stream every Thursday, unless something comes up, and then I'll post it in my Discord or tweet about it or post it on whatever. But I stream pretty much every Thursday around the same time. Yeah. And I mean, I raid into DTune like every fucking week. Oh yeah, my Discord is for subs only, just because it's also connected to my Patreon and my OnlyFans. But I'm trying to get better about tweeting when I have delays too, just so that like if people don't have the Discord, yeah. And once you're in it, you're in it. I don't kick people out, but it's just because I have some spicy stuff in there, I just try and like, that's like my age gate, is that if you've paid money, then at least you have I have an OnlyFans? Yeah, I do the spicy thing. So yeah, I think that has all my socials. And I post mostly on Twitter and Blue Sky about stream. So those are and honestly, Blue Sky is like the best place to go. I'm also gonna try and get better about updating the Twitch dashboard schedule. So that if you just go on my Twitch that you can see when I'm streaming next. But yeah, it's pretty much every Thursday. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yes, so I also include protest as also when you're doing any kind of activism at all, you should be considering that what activism is a type of protest. So I keep this in mind when I'm like doing Twitch streams and stuff. Like what is the purpose of what I'm doing if I'm doing something that's like covering politics or the news? 1, protest is an act of free speech and protesters must respect free speech. Basically, like, if you want to be heard, you have to also respect the right of other people to be heard. You can counter protest. That's perfectly fine. You can counter speech with more speech, but it's not super effective to fight against your own right to protest, if that makes sense. So like silencing people is not always great. Like again, if something's like an obvious death threat, like then it has to be an actionable, obvious, like this is encouraging or threatening harm. That's different. But like if it's just like someone saying something you don't like, counter it with better speech. 2, have a clearly articulated position with tenable demands and a practical, well-defined statement for what constitutes achieving your goal. So this reflects the satanic hope, right? So you want to have a thing you can change, and that's part 1. Part 2 was you need to have a way to change it that will have an actual tangible effect, right? So this is in your protest. You need to have a way for people to feel like they have hope to change the thing you're asking them to change. You need to give them a productive way to engage. So you're protesting, like you're standing on the street corner because you want something to happen. You're not just saying shit to say shit. You have a practical goal in mind. And I echo this. Yes, exactly. But yeah, God, what the fuck was I gonna say? I think like posting as well, you wanna have an idea of why you're posting something, and why someone should read the thing that you're sharing, and like have a goal in mind that this is achieving. Like awareness is fine for things that people genuinely aren't aware of, but ideally you should have something that is really going to have a effect, right? Or that people can learn from, or that they can do something about, right? The more productive your political posting is, or your activism, or your on the ground out in public protesting is, the more focused on being actionable and productive and achievable, the more people are going to be on your side, because they'll feel hopeful rather than depressed and disengaged, right? Effective protest is founded on a legitimate theory of change that is exemplified by the structure of, if I do X, then Y will happen because Z. So, again, it needs to be connected to a concept of what I'm doing this thing because it will, basically, if I do this thing, it will have an effect on this thing I want changed that I can actually change. And this is the mechanism for action, and I can actually like demonstrate that. I can see progress happening as I'm going through the stages of protest. Things need to be logically linked together for people to listen to you, otherwise they're not going to be able to follow what the fuck you're talking about. Protest must be based on a principle as opposed to identity politics. Everyone benefits from the pursuit of well-conceived principles. This is important. Now, while you might be arguing from a perspective of an identity politics thing, like trans rights, for example, right? If I'm arguing for a trans right issue, it's not just because I want rights for trans people. There needs to be an underlying principle that I'm actually arguing for. And that can be bodily autonomy. Everyone benefits from increased bodily autonomy, right? It could be the right to access spaces. But you need to have a principle that you can articulate, and this will also make it easier to have practical goals because you know what you're trying to achieve and why. And then when people are arguing with you, you can break it down to the underlying source code of your argument. So you can be like, okay, I want a right to abortion. Not just because I want the right for abortion, but it's because I want to be able to control what does and doesn't happen with my own body and to make medical decisions for myself. And I think that's good to keep in mind, that like when you're sharing news articles and stuff or making posts and things, that it's important to try and keep in mind, like, is this something that's going to benefit everybody because of the underlying principle, and not just be like, I want this for my group. And that's how you avoid things like turfery, because you're not just arguing because you want rights for women because you want rights for women. You have an underlying principle that you're arguing from. Makes it more difficult for people to weaponize your position against other people. Stay focused on specific issues and do not adopt issues that you think are analogously related. So that's keep focused. Yeah, the right of abortion is a necessary thing. It prevents deaths and it gives autonomy for women. Yes, but also like preventing deaths, like if you just argue from preventing deaths, then the counter argument is, but it's killing, right? Or autonomy for women, you want to argue like, you know, everyone should make the best medical decisions for themselves, right? And it becomes really difficult to argue with. And like, I don't disagree with you that it is autonomy for women, but everyone should have an autonomy, and that's the base principle. We're just making sure that's also being extended to women and not just men, right? And staying focused, that's how you stop going off on tangents and how you keep things focused on having tangible goals with measurable outcomes. If you're basically doing science with social stuff. So like, I will talk about how things are related in that, like, you know, I like to talk about intersectionality and how sex worker rights are connected to ableism, are connected to race politics, are connected to, like, etc. Like, all of these things are interconnected, but when you're trying to make a practical change, you have to stay focused and keep your scope narrow. You can throw out little things here and there to like hook people into caring. But you do really need to make sure that like when you don't get lost in the sauce and way out of scope to where you don't have like, you don't want a shotgun. You want to, like, if you're focused on reproductive rights, focus on reproductive rights. You can also talk about trans rights as far as they're based on the same principle of like, hey, people accessing like medical care without the interference of the state. And you can also like, talk about how, you know, a lot of the issues with transition care will touch on reproductive rights because people are upset that trans people will end up sterile. You can touch on that, but they're not analogously related. They're directly related. You keep to those direct links and you don't like branch out too far. Roe v. Wade was passed on the right for privacy because being nobody else's business was the easier, more unmovable argument. Yeah. And people can't just distract from the point. Exactly. So you like keep things like focused. And yeah, I love when people are smart because I learn a lot. And we're all smart. We're all smart on different topics. So we all have things to learn from each other. So yeah, just try and keep when you want to do something that's going to have a tangible, practical impact, you want to keep your focus narrow and pointed so that you have the best chance of making progress in that one topic. And then what you can then, you know, you can do coalition building and that sort of thing, but like you do want any actual protest needs to be focused. Stand for issues and principles. Do not reflexively support the entire agenda of parties, organizations, or individuals. Yes, you will disagree with people on a variety of things. It's about building support for each issue and each principle. So like I might support someone's argument that violence against women is bad, right? And they may be protesting to stop a conservative government from defunding and closing a women's shelter. I can support them in that. But I might not support them when they go and try and fight sex worker rights, right? And trying to focus on issues means that we will have broader allyship for each individual thing that we're doing rather than getting bogged down and trying to find the perfect accomplice, because it's not going to happen. Take the allies you can when you can, and focusing on principles and stuff means that you can still criticize your allies when they fuck up. So like, you know, you might work together with the Democrats to build a Green New Deal or something, but still be able to criticize them when they fucking shit the bed on Gaza. And because you're standing for issues and principles, not the party, that means when the party does something wrong, that you can correct them. And I think that's really important. And it also means that we can like keep each other honest and pick each other up when we make mistakes, like when you go into the individual level as well. Do not allow narratives to prevail over facts. So yeah, make sure that everything you're doing is grounded in data, facts, reality, and not just the stories that are more comforting, because you can only affect reality if you know what reality is before you try and change it. Like you need to accept what is real before you can then start to affect it, because like I can't type on a keyboard if I don't accept where the keys are. I'm not gonna type anything that makes any fucking sense if I don't accept that it's a QWERTY keyboard, right? So you have to kind of accept the facts for what they are and then work from there. And be willing to change your mind when faced with new facts. And now, human beings really do understand things through narrative, but make sure that your narrative reflects facts, not the other way around, and try and do what you can to be flexible. Restrict your movement to people who believe in the principles of your movement, right? So if I'm arguing for the principles of bodily autonomy, then TERFs might agree with me on reproductive rights, but they don't actually agree with me on the actual underlying principle. So I'm not gonna, like, I might include people who, like, don't have perfect politics or whatever, but if they're actively opposed to the underlying principle, then they're doing identity politics and not actually based in principles. If they're, you know, like, you know, they need to be on the bus. They don't need to be heading to the same stop, but they need to be on the same bus line as you. If they're not, then like, don't be like the Turks that build allyships with like far right white supremacists because they also believe that trans people aren't people. Like, don't do that. Yeah, no worries. See you in a bit. If your protest calls for the deprivation of rights and liberties of others, intimidates others, harasses or threatens others, silences others, then you are an enemy of freedom no matter what the justification. So yes, make sure that, again, the principles that you are upholding need to be pro-social and support everybody. You shouldn't be protesting to harm others because that's not effective. That's just harmful. And you need to always be expanding rights and responsibilities and not depriving them. And again, harm reduction is important. There is no situation where giving the power of deprivation of rights to people who will just yell in loud enough, in large enough numbers, is not a precedent we want to set, right? And then lastly, engaging in, promoting, or inciting, promoting, inciting, or celebrating physical violence that deliberately targets civilians is never justifiable. So, like, celebrating the deaths of other people is not a thing you should be doing as a protest. Now, will I occasionally find catharsis when bad people face consequences? To some degree, like with the Brian Thompson Luigi thing, it's like, I would never advocate someone doing that. I would never tell someone they should do that. I also don't know if I necessarily feel like Brian Thompson is a civilian, considering that he's a billionaire. But I would say that, like, what happened is a natural result of people's suffering going unheard. And we should do what we can to avoid that being necessary going forward, right? So I think this is really important to keep in mind, both protesting any governments, fighting for rights, but also like when you're posting online, right? Like try and keep some of these things in mind. Like, is it productive? Does it have a goal in mind? Is it something that someone can engage with? Is it based in a principle or a value? Is it encouraging violence? Is it harming others? Like, trying to keep this sort of thing in mind is a useful way to conceive of your social media habits. At least when it comes to politics, right? But also, like, you know, are you dogpiling on somebody? Is that productive? Is that achieving a goal that you want? Is that a good thing to be doing? So I definitely encourage, like, taking some time to, like, really consider, like, what you're doing and why, right? If that makes sense. And, like, we'll have lots of opportunities to practice this. Nobody's perfect. We're all gonna make mistakes. But, like, yeah, I definitely encourage, especially when you're, like, doing political posts in the Discord, like, try and do what you can to, like, contextualize stuff so that people can engage with it, think slow, think carefully, think critically, be productive, try and engage in satanic hope or whatever hope makes you feel engaged. But yeah, try and be more measured and considered about what you're posting and why, and like really interrogate it, like what you're trying to achieve with your posts and stuff, because anything that's political is like small a activism. You might not think of yourself as an activist who's making activism part of your job, for lack of a better term, part of your mission, the thing that you do. But when we talk and discuss politics, we are doing little a activism, and we do have to think about like what the impact is of what we're doing, right? So yeah, I think I said all I want to say for today as far as covering news. We've covered you know, we haven't noticed, like, we didn't cover any of the executive orders that Trump passed, but in some ways I feel like hopefully I've given you some tools to be able to cope with this flood of shit that's coming at our way. That if your government in whatever country you live in is being shitty, that I've given you some tools to be able to like fight back in a way that feels productive and not overwhelming and not draining and not panic inducing. But yeah. If y'all have any other thoughts, let me know. Oh yeah, that is a 6-0. Let me know, but if not, I think I'm gonna raid out because I'm getting dizzy and I think I need lunch. Because I did not sleep well last night. So I don't know what B stands for. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, we're going to raid D-Tune again, as we usually do on Thursdays, because he's usually the main person streaming after me on Thursday. D-Tune currently, probably Google it, yeah, that makes sense. D-Tune is doing a sub-goal. Speaking of, I gotta get that suspension figured out soon, now that I'm feeling better, once I've got time. Yeah, Modern Subnautica, woo! So, D-Tune has had a sub-goal of doing a 10-hour uninterrupted whatever game chat shows, and chat shows Modded Subnautica, which is mean because D-Tune has thalassophobia, which chat has dubbed that assophobia, which I adore. Thank you so much, Vampy. It was good to see you. We'll see. Next week, maybe I'll play some horror games. I just have, like, I have a work thing tomorrow, so I have to like have a shower and pack and get ready for that, so like I have much less time this week. But next week maybe I'll play to celebrate Salt beating Amnesia. I'll play some yeah, thank you. I use any pronouns, by the way, but yeah, I've had top surgery and stuff. I appreciate it. But yeah, now that Salt's beaten, is I think gonna beat Amnesia probably tomorrow, or at least early next week. So by the time I stream, they'll be done. So maybe I'll play Penumbra, which is made by the same devs. MB? Hell yeah! Fuck yeah! I love my nice little like neurodivergent, trans, queer little community we're building. It's fun in here. I love you guys. I love having breakfast to start my day with y'all. It's a good time. But yes, so I'm gonna raid out. Maybe I'll play Penumbra next week. Either that or more Marvel caps. I'm a little angry funny gremlin. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna raid D-Tune, and I appreciate it so much. I will see you next Thursday, probably for Spooky Dookie Games. Maybe brief news to cover if there's gonna be an election here, but we shall see. But yeah, thank you so much. Let me. Where's the raid button? Raid button. Raid button. Raid button. Raid button. Start raid. Okay. So we're gonna raid out. Raid butt. Yeah, we're gonna raid butt. Yeah. Give D-Tune some love from me and enjoy their fear. They're very fun to watch be scared. Yeah. And have a good rest of your Thursday, a good weekend. Stay safe. Touch grass if you need to, or snow as the case may be, and I love you all. Bye. That assophobia. Y'all are the best. Bye. Bye, Dolly. Bye, Vampy. Bye, Pine, if you're still here. Steffi already left. Bye, y'all. Y'all the best.